Chapter 40. A Friend and a Recipe. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 40. ANGs. I fell asleep while writing. Here are the chapters, double chapters. Thanks for your support and sorry for the delay. Daphne sighed as she sat in the compartment of the train back to Hogwarts. This was probably the worst Christmas and New Year she had ever had. And that is saying something, considering who her dad was. And that was all because of one person. Axel Hunt. Daphne had never been an ordinary girl. Being raised by her father, along with her mental maturity, had made it such that she couldn't quite connect with any of the children her age. The thing is, if she really bared even some of her thoughts to those kids, they'll probably start thinking she's some sort of dark lady in making. The only exception was Axel. He was a big mystery to her. But from the very first time she had seen him, she could see at least some similarities between the two of them. Both didn't have a good childhood and both had to mature early. In his company, she could be herself. Thus, over the months, she had come to really enjoy their friendship. But, being in his company could also be so frustrating sometimes. She didn't know much about him and couldn't understand his actions. And, the problem was, he wouldn't even tell her anything. Every time she'd ask something, he'll either evade the topic or give a perfunctory response with a stop-being-nosy look. He wouldn't tell her who raised him, he wouldn't tell her how he got his scars, he wouldn't tell her much about how he got his body in such bad condition, he wouldn't tell her how he was so abnormally skilled at some things, and he wouldn't tell her why he's been working himself half to death every day and pushing himself so hard. Heck, she couldn't even tell why he seems to hate Rose's family so much. It's always felt like she's the only one who actually gives a fuck. That he doesn't care at all whether she's there or not. Especially since he wouldn't acknowledge her as his friend. And it was beginning to remind her of someone else. There was one other person who had always treated her coldly no matter what she did, and no matter how hard she tried. The only things he seemed to care about were money, power, and politics. This person was, of course, her father. She had tried her best to gain his acknowledgement until she was no longer naive and finally began to see the man for who he really was. After that, she had given up as she realized the fact that he'll never care about her. And she was right, he never changed. But she had thought that Axel was different. Especially after that time in the woods. He had even shared a little about his past with her that time. That had given her hope. That yes, Axel will not always be the same. That he'll come around if she put in enough effort. And she found an opportunity through Christmas, preparing his gift after putting a lot of thought into it. And, she was hopeful and excited about the outcome. She had anticipated how he would respond. A Christmas gift in return would be asking too much from someone like him, and she knew that there were low chances that he'll accept being friends, but she had at least thought that even if he didn't accept friendship, he'll at least be moved and there will be some change. But much to her dismay, he didn't even acknowledge it, let alone thank her or be moved. She had waited for him to say something about it throughout the day, or even at dinner, but he didn't. And yet, she kept telling herself that there must be a reason. That no matter how much this seemed like something her father would do, he wasn't like that man, and there must be a reason why he didn't respond. Maybe he never got it. No way, she had gotten the notification on her magic mirror saying that it had been successfully delivered. Then maybe he didn't see it. No way, who doesn't check presents on Christmas? Then there must be some other reason, right? She hadn't given up hope. But then after dinner, when she saw her mother kneeling on the floor with her eyes moist with unshed tears, an image of her mother kneeling before her father had popped into Daphne's mind. The reason she got angry wasn't because she had misunderstood the situation. She knew her mother wouldn't do anything inappropriate. The real reason was, Axel reminded her once again of her father at that time and she had lost it. She was extremely out of her mind and got further unhinged when he refused to explain properly. No longer able to bear it, she had run away after saying what was bothering her, not able to face him any longer. And, she had been miserable ever since. And that was the reason why on this return trip to Hogwarts, she kept silent while her friends were excitedly discussing their Christmas. Currently, the topic had shifted to what gifts they had given each other. I gave my aunt a set of Oddwill candles that help with concentration. They are really popular these days and I had to order them 1 month early. She loved them. As for others, I gave Hannah an enchanted bunny, Neville. A squill plant, Rose. Some of the newest prank items on Zonkos, Daphne. A bestseller called Magical Me, and Axel a box of his Haze chocolates. They would have talked about the gifts, but one thing was peculiar: you gave a present to Axel? Asked Hannah. Susan nodded. Yeah, what's wrong with that? Neville shook his head. Why would anyone give a present to him? He's always so rude and he rarely even talks, he said as if he couldn't understand it. Susan shrugged. Well, a lot of people would disagree with you on that, I'm sure. Especially girls. He even has more than one few fans at Hogwarts. Bedodem Rose began to snigger. Well, I also gave him a gift, she said with a grin. As long as he opens it, he'll keep laughing at odd times for 24 hours. Why would you do that? That doesn't seem right, said Hannah. Rose looked away with a pout. I was so pissed that I couldn't help it. Besides, you have to admit, it's quite funny to imagine him laughing, she said as a smirk came to her face with just a thought of it. Susan giggled as she found it a bit intriguing as well. She looked at Daphne. Oh right, you had invited him for Christmas, right? Did he come? Was he laughing? Daphne shook her head. He was the same, she said helplessly. But then she began to think. If he was alright, does that mean he didn't open the gifts? No, let's not once again get her hopes up. The only conclusion is, it's better to stay away from Axel Hunt. It'll only hurt her since there's no way he's going to change. There's no way he'll ever agree to become friends with her. He most likely wasn't even bothered a little bit after all this while she's been agonizing over it all the time. Screech the train reached Hogsmeade and Daphne disembarked along with her friends. She was a bit apprehensive about facing Axel after that incident, but she thought that it shouldn't be a problem for now since he rarely shows himself. Though, it would seem that today was her unlucky day. Because the guy was standing right in front of her. Daphne wanted to hide. She wanted to take a different route. And apparently, she wasn't the only one. Hey, it's Axel. Hide me and don't stop. She said, gripping Daphne's shoulders and hiding behind her as they walked. Susan laughed out aloud. This is a first. Rose Potter scared after pranking someone, she said in amusement. Ouch. Rose pinched Susan on her bum. Not funny, sus. Stop looking at him and walk in front of me. She ordered, hiding behind both Susan and Daphne. Having no choice, Daphne had to walk in his direction unwillingly. She saw that he was actually talking to Martina and there was even a slight smile on his face. That made her angry. Here she is, all bothered after having fought with someone who was probably her best friend, and there he is, chatting with the most popular girl in Hogwarts, not looking bothered at all. Feeling angry and stupid, she walked past him while ignoring him. Just when she thought she had crossed the hurdle, a voice called out from behind, Hey, Daphne. Can you give me a minute? It wasn't a question. At least it didn't feel like one. Because she found out she somehow didn't have a choice. Axel and Daphne took a carriage together with just the two of them. Axel decided to clear the misunderstanding right away. He was tired of it. Listen, about that time in the dining room, he began, but Daphne cut him off with a shake of her head. That's not the reason why I was upset, said Daphne quietly. When she spoke, Axel sighed in relief. At least she was willing to talk. It could have been worse, right? But he got confused by her words. Really? Are you really sure what I'm talking about? He asked. Daphne nodded. My mother is not someone who'd do those sorts of things, she said while looking away. Axel tilted his head. If that is not the reason, then why else would she cry? Oh right, the gift. And your gift? I only found it after I left your house, he explained. This should do, right? Daphne gritted her teeth. Liar, that wasn't a lie. Daphne looked at him incredulously, facing him for the first time. How is that possible? How did you not find it? Axel furrowed his brows. How is it not possible? My windows were closed all day and I only checked later. Daphne pointed a finger at him with a face that was saying, at least find a better excuse. There you go. Who doesn't check their mailboxes and check the windows on Christmas morning for presents? She asked him mockingly. Axel's fist clenched. Her question was valid, but it still pissed him off. Only those who haven't gotten a Christmas present before in their whole fucking life, he said rigidly. That was true. The first Christmas present he got was the knife from Martina, who had given it to him a day before the holidays started. Daphne, who had just thought that she had exposed his lie, went blank after hearing his response. Never got a present. She muttered insensibly before she looked back at him in shock. Yeah. Is it so hard to believe? It's not that rare. Why are you so surprised? This is the problem, she said, glaring at him with teary eyes. I don't know anything about you. She complained in a muffled voice. And now I feel horrible. Axel heaved an exasperated breath. What's the deal with her? If everything is already clear, then why is he still not forgiven? Look, I called you here to clear the misunderstanding in reply to your question in that letter. You had finally convinced me of being friends, but, he began saying but paused when he saw her head snap back in his direction so fast that it startled him. What did you say? You were actually going, she asked, her eyes wide with disbelief. Axel rolled his eyes, yeah. But you are now making me reconsider my decision by being so annoying and confusing. Geez, the misunderstanding is cleared. Why the hell are you still, we're friends? She asked, interrupting. A vein popped on Axel's forehead. Yeah, you can say so. He couldn't finish his sentence before Daphne had hugged him tightly, surprising him a ton. Friends hug, right? She asked, her voice out muffled due to his uniform. Axel gritted his teeth. Yeah. But, also, I want to know everything about you, Daphne asked, pulling her off. Yeah. She asked, smiling like a goof. Don't push it, as you wish, my friend. That night, Axel frowned in concentration as he solidified the last of his shields. He was almost done. 99.5%. 99.6%. 99.7%. The progress bar was flowing steadily. Looks like his mind was working well now. In fact, it was working better than ever. Looks like he had made the right decision, even if Daphne is a little more annoying now. 99.8%. 99.9%. Yes. Almost there. This is it. The final moment. 100%, congratulations. You have achieved the first stage of occlumency. Beginner stage occlumency. Reached. Rewards. Potion recipe to cure the side effects of your injury. Plus 5% approval. Total 25%, let's fucking go. Axel shouted in a rare moment of joy as he checked the interface to show the recipe. Yep. No cliffhanger since you already have the next one. Go right ahead. Chapter 41. Special Quest and System Shop. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Special Quest received. Get the Elixir of Life. Elixir of Life, also known as the Elixir of Immortality, is a substance that can extend a person's life indefinitely as long as they keep consuming it regularly. It can only be created through a philosopher's stone. You need to get the elixir of life in order to complete the recipe. Rewards, elixir of life, plus 3% approval. Special skill. Further information of nether dimension. But, the system wasn't even done yet. The notifications hadn't stopped yet. Total approval rate. 25%. Congratulations. You have gained enough approval rate to unlock the shop feature. The skills you can gain from your SP are no longer random. The shop feature. Yeah. Axel cheered. But then he frowned. Hey. Don't try to distract me with this shop feature. Yelled Axel after pushing down his excitement. The shop feature was good, but the information about elixir of life had already ruined his mood. It can only be produced by a philosopher's stone, and that thing can literally grant you immortality. How is he supposed to get it? System, how can this be so difficult? Phoenix tears. Elixir of life. Isn't this overkill? Are you trying to make things difficult for me? I think even when used individually, they'd be able to heal me, he protested. He just had a simple injury, damn it. Why does this have to be so difficult? Negative. The system isn't trying to make it difficult. The solution is completely reasonable. Your nerves have been terribly damaged by massive amounts of dark magic from the Cruciatus curse. There are some other methods that can cure you, but this is the most viable option. The procedure of the recipe is not complicated, and no complicated magics or rituals need to be performed. And you are wrong. The ingredients can't heal you individually. Phoenix tears aren't all that powerful, especially against excessive dark magic, and if they could really heal everything, there'd be no permanently disabled people in the wizarding world. Elixir of life can extend your life, but it can't heal you. Granted that there are other ways to heal you, but this is the most convenient one for you in the current circumstances. Axel laughed sardonically. Convenient. You call this convenient? Look at the ingredients, damn it. How am I supposed to get them? Phoenix tears. He'd seen this being sold on auctions on Big Owl. Ain't no way he had that kind of money. And let's not even mention the Philosopher's Stone. Gold and immortality. Are you fucking kidding? How is he supposed to get that thing? The system, however, was unfazed by his outburst. It is indeed the most convenient method. You already have most of the ingredients. And Dumbledore currently has the possession of Philosopher's Stone, so you can obtain the elixir of life as well. Axel had the longest pause before he blinked his eyes. Back up for a moment, Miss Robotic Voice. Could you fucking explain? He asked, still trying to process that. He already had most of the ingredients. What was the system saying? There were only 2 ingredients that actually matched with the diet he had, but currently, he didn't even have those. So what did the system mean he had most of it? And that jolly old man had currently had the fucking Philosopher's Stone. And so, the system explained. Check the contents of your bag once again. What? A few moments later. Axel sat on the floor with a variety of things spread out all around him. His eyes were empty and his appearance looked quite lifeless. He already knew that the most powerful woman in Britain had sent him gifts. On 2 occasions. Once with the apology letter and once for Christmas. Of course, he hadn't even bothered opening those extended space pouches. But, he had no idea that they would all turn out to be, like this. And even Andromeda had sent what she could. So. Right now, around him were piles of coins, a lot of potions related to healing and health, and various ingredients and supplements as well. Somewhere in that pile, there was also a small vial of Phoenix tears. Suffice it to say, he was damn near scared to death right now. If they are willing to give him this much, there's only one thing they could want out of this. His life. Or more correctly, something that'll be equivalent to giving up his life. Why else would they bother? Of course, he isn't going to use any of this. This is useless. I ain't using these, he declared. Then you can ask Evelyn. In hopes of curing Astoria, she has collected a wide variety of healing materials. None of which actually worked. Axel thought about it. That was more doable. He can return the favor later. Making a decision, Axel crossed the ingredients from the list. Now, the only problem will be the elixir of life. System, you still haven't told me about the elixir of life. How do I get it? It is a given that something as important as the Philosopher's Stone has to be kept under maximum security. How is he supposed to get it? And, where should he look? Under Dumbledore's bed. In his locker. Or does he keep it with himself all the time? It is hidden in the third-floor corridor. You need to figure out the rest by yourself. Damn. Axel's eyes widened. That was more than enough information for him. Why didn't he think of that? It all made sense now. Why else all that fanfare? The man had even put the Dementors on guard, as he witnessed and experienced first-hand. Now that he had a clear direction in his mind, a feeling of excitement began coursing through him. Philosopher's Stone. Immortality. Infinite gold, getting healed. All these things can be possible. A fire lit up in the depths of his eyes. There's no time to waste. He needs to get to work as soon as possible. He stood up even as his mind began to think up everything he'll need to do in order to get the stone. First of all, he'll have to go past the Dementors. Then it is also expected that there'll be some wards he'll have to pass by, so his ward breaking has to be top class. And last but not the least, his stealth skills need to be as high as possible. He looked at the stealth skills. Presence reduction. Progress. 50%, blend. Progress. 50%, these two skills were the skills he already had. At 50%, he's already the master of stealth now. They had stopped progressing since he'd need potions to progress further. And now that he had contracted a potioneer through Evelyn, that problem has been solved. He'll now make that percentage higher just in case. Then he looked at the ward breaking. Progress. 20%, this won't do. He quickly needs to increase this one. Next, he looked at his defense against Dementors. Special skill. Light infusion progress. 17%, he had practiced this one as well, due to his fear of Dementors and not wanting to feel that weak and helpless again, but it would still need some work. And last but probably the most important, arcane eyes. 15%, he's going to need this one as well. The most important thing would be to see. This skills is a special skill. And it has huge potential. Since he now the potion, he can level this one as well. But, this doesn't seem enough, does it? He's against someone as good as Dumbledore. Ain't no way he could succeed with just this much, right? He'll need to use all of his cards. System, open the shop feature, he ordered. He decided to check out the new feature of the system. Up to now, he has unlocked 4 features. 1. Class feature. Upon choosing a class, he gets to master all the skills and knowledge entailed under it. 2. Stealing system feature. The more he steals, the more SP and knowledge he'd gain. Once the SP has reached a certain amount, he'll get a skill. 3. Arcane speech. He broke free some laws of this world and gained the ability to use the arcane language. 4. Shop. Yet to find out. Upon giving the order to open the shop feature, a list of skills along with their SP price appeared in front of him along with the description of the shop. Shop feature, buy the available things like skills, rituals, information, etc. in exchange for SP. Currently, only skills can be bought from the shop. Skill list. Your SP can now be used to buy the skill you want and you can afford. There is no end to the skills available, so the skills displayed will only be a fraction of those. You can either choose from these, or search a skill of your preference by giving its description. Axel looked at the list available in front of him. Knife Strike. 100 SP Dash. 2000 SP Dodge. 5000 SP Camouflage. 2000 SP. The list went on, but he couldn't really find the satisfying ones here. All seemed mediocre. It looks like he'll have to describe the skills he wants in order to get them. But that wouldn't be a problem, would it? After all, the second feature had helped him a lot. Stealing System Feature. The more he steals, the more SP and knowledge he'd gain. He had gotten two things from the second feature. SP and knowledge. And between those two, the more valuable one isn't the SP. It's knowledge. There are some things about stealing that he wouldn't have known without a lot of experience and research that he could just get into his head easily. For example, he wouldn't have known that there are ways he can be tracked through his blood, DNA, or even fingerprints. He also didn't know that he had been leaving behind so many clues and traces that a skilled detective would have caught at least some of them. That's the kind of knowledge system gives. And due to all that knowledge, he knows exactly what he needs. And he'll damn well make sure he has it. Because this time, the one he's stealing from is Albus Dumbledore. The person who reportedly has the highest amount of magical power among the people he has encountered until now. The man who is called the greatest wizard of the century. Thus began Axel's preparations for his biggest heist until now. And there were a lot of things he needed to do. And the thing on his list was to get more SP. After he had unlocked his ward breaking, the next skill he was supposed to get was Arcane Runes. And it was fucking expensive. 20,000 SP. The deal didn't seem worth it to Axel, considering the fact that he can't even draw runes. So, he hadn't worked hard enough to reach that objective. Thus, he had around 9k SP on him at the moment, most of which was spent on buying a skill he'd need for his heist. Traceless Thief. A true thief never leaves any traces behind. This skill is going to help you in hiding everything that can give away your identity. Yep, he had needed something like this for a long time. And he wasn't much surprised that a skill like this already existed. After all, it's the most crucial part of being a magical thief. But, after buying the skill, he was in a dire need of SP to buy more skills that were going to be necessary for the heist. And he needed it quickly, since he also has to learn and practice those skills as well after buying them. So, to get the SP as quickly as possible, he went for the desperate measures. The Slytherin dorms. And the girls' side of the dorms. Up until now, he hadn't tried Slytherin or Ravenclaw dorms and any girls' dorms yet due to obvious reasons, but now was not the time to be hesitating. Slytherin dorms have the most number of rich students, so the SP he gains will be higher, even though the risk is high. And most of them are assholes anyways, so he can even take something precious from some of them without remorse. The girls' dorms, well, the things stolen from there gave much more SP, but he still had put his dignity first in the past and not gone there. But, now is not the time for that. There's a chance for him to heal, to get rid of all this pain and everyday struggle. And the lengths he's willing to go to get rid of this miserable status will surprise anyone. And list out the skills you want him to buy. Chapter 42. First attempt. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Thus began Axel's preparations for his biggest heist until now. And there were a lot of things he needed to do. And the thing on his list was to get more SP. After he had unlocked his ward breaking, the next skill he was supposed to get was Arcane Runes. And it was fucking expensive. 20,000 SP. The deal didn't seem worth it to Axel, considering the fact that he can't even draw runes. So, he hadn't worked hard enough to reach that objective. Thus, he had around 9k SP on him at the moment, most of which was spent on buying a skill he'd need for his heist. Traceless Thief. A true thief never leaves any traces behind. This skill is going to help you in hiding everything that can give away your identity. Yep, he had needed something like this for a long time. And he wasn't much surprised that a skill like this already existed. After all, it's the most crucial part of being a magical thief. But, after buying the skill, he was in a dire need of SP to buy more skills that were going to be necessary for the heist. And he needed it quickly, since he also has to learn and practice those skills as well after buying them. So, to get the SP as quickly as possible, he went for the desperate measures. The Slytherin dorms. And the girls' side of the dorms. Up until now, he hadn't tried Slytherin or Ravenclaw dorms and any girls' dorms yet due to obvious reasons, but now was not the time to be hesitating. Slytherin dorms have the most number of rich students, so the SP he gains will be higher, even though the risk is high. And most of them are assholes anyways, so he can even take something precious from some of them without remorse. The girls' dorms, well, the things stolen from there gave much more SP, but he still had put his dignity first in the past and not gone there. But, now is not the time for that. There's a chance for him to heal, to get rid of all this pain and everyday struggle. And the lengths he's willing to go to get rid of this miserable status will surprise anyone. 1 month passed by while he trained only and did some side thieving on the nights. And things were going pretty well as he had made various preparations and plans by now. He was a bit hopeful that he'd be able to get this thing over soon and heal himself. So, he decided to give it a trial run. To just go ahead and scout out what exactly he was dealing with here. Who knows? Maybe he was already ready and didn't need to make more preparations. With such hopes, he went to the third-floor corridor after elaborate preparations. But, it soon became very clear to him that things weren't going to go as he had envisioned. After a month of training, after getting all the potions, with his upgraded skills and newly bought skills, Axel thought he was ready. He went to the third-floor corridor expecting Dementors. But to his surprise, there were none. Relieved by the unexpected boon, he had continued down the corridor, step by step as he used his skill. Ward breaking, he used his skill to check out if there were any wards. And to his surprise, there really were none. But, as he went closer to the door, he started to feel like not going further anymore. What would he even do? Isn't it dangerous? Let's not do this. Wait. Axel quickly snapped out of it. The fuck? Why didn't my skill detect that, he muttered. Whatever that was, it would have worked on anyone else, but since Axel was on a whole different level in terms of mental strength, it couldn't affect him. System, I already dodged that one, can you at least tell me what it is now? He asked. The system wasn't supposed to help him in his missions. Otherwise, the rewards and approval rate he was supposed to get wouldn't be allowed by the world laws since he didn't earn them. You have successfully resisted it, so the system can inform you about it. It was a cleverly hidden repellent ward. It will try to repel all those who try to approach the door save for a few individuals. Axel frowned. If so, then why couldn't his skill detect it? Well, considering that he had made around 30% progress in ward breaking, it can be assumed that Dumbledore has a much higher mastery over the subject than that. Well, just to be sure, he muttered as he closed his eyes for a moment. Arcane eyes, art.art.ratus, he muttered. When he raised his head once again, his irises were glowing and so were the veins on his face that were close to the eyes. Looking ahead, at first, he saw no other ward other than the repellent ward, but if he looked carefully, there was a very thin line of magic hidden ahead. Fuck, he muttered as he cancelled the skill and clutched at his head. This was the new ability he had gotten from his arcane eyes. It lets him see the magic for a brief moment. From the pain he was experiencing, it was clear that he was not ready to use that skill yet. But, it has given him enough info for now. This is confusing, he muttered as he rested on his knees, gasping for breath. The man could have laid the whole place with different kinds of traps, but instead, there are only two. He already knows what one is for, repelling. Then what about the other? He can't even detect it, so how'd he check what it was for? And, bypassing it would be even more difficult. Axel sighed. It seems like he currently doesn't have the skills to deal with this. He was far too overconfident, thinking that since he had reached the 25% of the ward breaking, he was a fucking boss. But turns out, Albus Dumbledore isn't only an expert in transfiguration, alchemy, and dueling, he is also quite an expert in wards if he can outmatch 25% of the system's ward breaking. Thus, there was no way Axel could do this theft without a lot of practice in the warding breaking skill. With his current level, it's gonna take a while for him to be able to deal with the wards, considering that this was just the beginning of the corridor. There could be anything in there. Fuck you, Dumbledore, he muttered as he began to leave, but before leaving, he suddenly turned around as he got an idea. He took out a paper from his pouch, made an airplane, and let it fly toward the second ward. The paper belonged to someone he didn't mind using as a scapegoat. Then, he turned on his arcane eyes once again and observed the process. As the airplane flew past the second ward, the ward got triggered as the thin line of magic snapped. But still, the airplane was unharmed. And as Axel saw the magic moving, he realized what the second ward was for. Fuck, he muttered as he began to run. He now knew what both wards were for. One is a repellent ward. It's so powerful that very few might be able to resist it if they aren't on the list of people who are exempted by the caster. The other one is a few steps ahead. And Axel can't detect this one either, or rather, it's even more cleverly hidden. What was its function? It's some sort of alarm or notification ward. As soon as he passes by this one, it means that he has resisted the repellent ward enough to reach that point. And anyone able to do that isn't just some curious student, but the real deal, and the old man will be informed. It was simple but brilliant. What is a best protection for the Philosopher's Stone than Albus fucking Dumbledore himself? And the thing is, the second one was hidden even more carefully, so Dumbledore could even amuse himself watching the trespassers attempt to go further and stop him whenever he wants. He had failed. Calm down, muttered Axel as he returned back to his hideout after his failure. His fist clenched as he faced the reality. He might not be able to steal it within this year. How could he, when the difference in skill was so overwhelming? And what else was he expecting anyway? It's the Philosopher's Stone, something that can grant the owner immortality and infinite gold. There's no way it could have been protected by obstacles that a person with only 1 year of magical training could pass, right? But, he had the system. If only he can take his time. He can really do it. Accepting the reality, Axel lay down on the floor, letting the disappointment settle. It's going to take time, but at least he now knows exactly what he's up against. And, he has time. Plus, the rewards are going to be huge. So, his situation isn't that bad, right? It could have been worse. It became worse. Fucking flag. It was just after a few days after his first attempt. He had been in the library, minding his own business when, pest. What is it? He asked, turning his head towards Daphne, who was trying to attract his attention. Should not keep it down, she said in a harsh whisper that probably attracted more attention than his voice did. Axel's eye twitched. The fuck you want? He asked in a lower voice. Daphne came closer as she whispered into his ear. I have a very shocking news. Axel looked unimpressed. What is it? Promise you won't tell anyone, she whispered. Axel just stared at her like she was an idiot. Yeah right, like I usually gossip with a lot of people, he muttered. Daphne pouted but still didn't back down. There's still Martina, she said grudgingly. There were indeed very few people Axel would even give the time of day in these busy days. Axel shook his head. This was taking too much time. I don't want to hear it, he said as he went back to his work. Daphne slumped. Fine. It was about the third-floor corridor, she said in lamentation. She was looking forward to seeing his reaction to the shocking piece of news, but it was no use now. Because she knew that once Axel has lost interest, there's no chance he'll least, I promise, came Axel's voice, surprising Daphne as a sudden pressure descended on her, making it a bit difficult to breathe properly. Daphne turned her head to see Axel looking at her intensely. What? She asked. I said, I promise to not tell anyone. Now tell me this secret already, he said seriously. Oh, okay, said Daphne, a bit flustered as she sang like a bird under the pressure. Apparently, the third-floor corridor has the Philosopher's Stone, guarded by a three-headed dog. And someone's trying to steal it, she said, and was rewarded by the sight of Axel's eyes widening as his mouth fell open. It had to be noted that for someone else, it might be a normal expression, but in Axel's case, it was an equivalent of an ordinary person shrieking in horror and passing out. Snap giggle Axel didn't even pay attention to Daphne snapping his picture as he processed that information. Daphne, he said to her, his eyes still unfocused as his mind raced. He needed more information. Yeah? Asked Daphne, looking at the picture she had taken. Would you come to the broom closet with me? He asked. There were too many people who could hear their conversation here in this quiet place. They needed to go somewhere private since the information was too sensitive. Daphne almost had a heart attack hearing those words. Inside a broom closet, so, only Rose, Neville, Hermione, Susan, Hannah and you know about this. Are you sure? He asked, standing with his wand lit up with lumos. Daphne nodded, still not quite believing that she was currently in a broom closet. She certainly didn't expect her first time to be like this. But Axel was too focused to pay her any heed. How did you guys find out? He asked. It took a moment for Daphne to come to her senses. Oh, Rose, Hermione, and Neville found out about most of it. They just asked me about the Philosopher's Stone, said Daphne as she then explained how Rose found out about it. Apparently, the three of them stumbled into the third-floor corridor and then went into the room at the end which had a three-headed dog on the other side, guarding a trapdoor. It started from there. But Axel was frowning the whole time. How were they not stopped by the repellent ward? He wondered. They shouldn't have been able to go with their mental power. Maybe the repellent ward was only installed later when the alarm was being tripped repeatedly by bumbling and curious students. So, they most likely also tripped the alarm, meaning that there's a high chance that Dumbledore knows about this. But, more importantly, someone was trying to steal it. How do you know someone's trying to steal it? He asked. Daphne sighed, it's someone between that bitch and greasy git. But there's a chance that it could be anyone else, she said, showing her disgust at both Umbridge and Snape. Both were thoroughly hated individuals. She then explained the whole situation about how Rose and friends came to know about it. Apparently, it all started with Halloween, which was actually a diversion. By the end of her explanation, Axel clenched his fists. Things just couldn't go as he expected them to go. Time, the only thing he thought he possessed, had been taken away from him as now he had to steal the stone before this competitor of his stole it first or made the situation even more difficult. It's decided. He's going to go for it this year. There's no time to prepare. He's just going to wait for the right opportunity. A.N. Power Stones. Confrontation. Chapter 44. The most hated character. You are listening at novelfull.audio. This chapter is hardcore. Chapter 43. Days went by as Axel trained, planned, plotted, and brainstormed. In one of the rooms in the noble suite he had been staying in, the walls were covered with sheets of messily drawn diagrams, plans, and charts, all connected by lines. Most were of the third-floor corridor, but many were also different houses' dorms. This was his planning room, the place where he plans all his thefts. Why do all this? Well, these are here to help him visualize. Hogwarts is his battlefield. And it's best to know every nook and cranny of it. Things don't always go according to his plans, so it's best to be prepared and have all the escape routes, obstacles, and props memorized. In his one hand, he had a hand gripper which he was continuously compressing and relaxing, training his weak-s grip strength. While he held a coffee in the other hand as he looked over at the plans. These days, he has been just too busy. So busy that he's been neglecting sleep. Right now, he was feeling so tired that he felt like passing out. I should sleep now, he murmured, putting down everything. He really couldn't skip it anymore. He can feel it. He really needs to sleep or his body wouldn't be able to take it. But just as he lay down on the floor, a clock sounded, signifying that it was time for class. The fuck? It's morning already. He muttered with a frown. The time flew so quickly. It seems like he'll have to sleep in the classes today instead of training. As Axel stood up, he felt a bit dizzy for a moment. Shaking his head, he ate his breakfast and went for classes. The first class turned out to be of Dada, which is held with the Ravenclaws. Wake me up if Umbridge comes, he told Daphne as he slept with his head resting on his hand. His elbows were propped up on the table and his eyes were obscured by his hair. It truly looked like he was just reading the book on the table, and he would have easily gotten away with it as well. But, for some reason, after some time, his hands gave away as his head fell down on the table with an audible thunk. And, despite being the lightest of sleepers, he didn't wake up even after that. Axel woke up to someone violently shoving him like crazy. The fuck? He yelled out in surprise, before he became aware of the situation he was in when he saw a toad staring at him. Correction, it was a toad-like woman staring at him with a creepy smile. Detention, Mr. Hunt. I expect you to be in my office, Friday at 5 p.m. sharp. No excuses, she said cheerfully, as if she was really anticipating it. Meanwhile, all Axel could think was, am I having a nightmare? After class, Axel cursed repeatedly due to the predicament he found himself in. Usually, he's a very light sleeper and he should have woken up just by the distinct sound of Umbridge's heels sound approaching, let alone his head falling on the desk like that. But earlier, he didn't even wake up after Daphne tried shoving him multiple times. There was only one conclusion. He had passed out. Seriously, of all the times his body had failed him, did it have to happen in that creepy bitch's class? Damn it, he usually would never even sleep in her class, to begin with. But today he straight up passed out, damn it. And that has earned him detention now, meaning more time waste. What the hell was wrong with you? I shook the fuck out of you, but you didn't wake up until the bitch was standing right in front of us. I was scared out of my mind. Exclaimed Daphne as soon as Umbridge had left. Axel grimaced. It's not like he enjoyed waking up to the face of Umbridge staring down at him. For some reason, a troll seemed to be a much better alternative. And this is coming from someone who's had the misfortune to actually experience both the cases. I might have been a bit tired, he replied evasively. Daphne gasped, looking horrified. It must be really bad if you're actually admitting to it, she muttered to herself, then looked at him seriously. What the hell has been going on with you lately? Can you please tell me, she asked in genuine distress. Axel sighed. How could he tell her the truth? If he ever successfully stole the stone, Daphne and her friends would be the first of the people whose minds Dumbledore would check, considering their open involvement in the matter. So, telling her anything related to that would be asking for trouble. He yawned while rubbing his eyes tiredly. Well, I can't tell you exactly what is going on, but I can tell you that I'm very close to healing myself. So, taking rest is very low on my priority list, he said, revealing as much truth as he could. Daphne's eyes widened. Really? You're actually going to be healed? She asked, overjoyed. It could be seen that she understood just how big of a news this was. Axel shrugged. Well, I wouldn't say I'm sure, but there's hope, he said dismissively. Daphne nodded in understanding. Well, then I can certainly understand why you are trying so hard, even I would do the same. But, she sighed, I might sound like my mum, but you need rest as well. Take sick leave and go rest, please, she said imploringly. Fine. Axel didn't say anything more. But instead of going to his next class, he decided to go and rest. So, that's what moms usually say, huh? How naggy, he thought as he saw Daphne leave. He would never accept that he was a bit envious. Excuse me. Just as he was about to leave as well, someone's voice caused him to stop. Axel turned around to see a short boy looking at him nervously. What is it? He asked the mousy boy. Axel remembered seeing him in the classes. This guy is just as much unsocial as Axel, though for different reasons. The boy shifted uncomfortably. I just came to warn you about the detention from Professor Yu. Umbridge. It can be tough, he said, rubbing the back of his hand. Axel tilted his head. Oh. What did she do? He asked. It wouldn't hurt to know before how he was going to be wasting time for his idiocy. The boy tried to speak, but words seemed to have stuck in his throat. Looking panicked, the jittery boy fled away, leaving Axel with question marks on his head. What was that about? Muttered Axel. Shrugging, he went on his way. He wasn't particularly worried about the detentions. Today was Friday and Axel was currently on his way to Umbridge's office. It was time for Axel to serve his first ever detention at Hogwarts. That is not to say that he was a good student, or that he didn't do anything wrong yet. It only meant that he was just that good at not getting caught. And this time would not have been any different. But he wasn't in the right condition that day, both physically and mentally, thus falling unconscious. It wouldn't have been an issue had he not passed out instead of going into his alert.sleep mode as he had planned. He would admit that it was a mistake to not rest properly despite being in a desperate situation. But the thing was, he really didn't know it could lead to such consequences since he'd always thought himself above normal people who sleep on time. He was only 12, so he was allowed some 8th syndrome. Besides, no one was there to tell him that not resting could lead to such disastrous consequences. So, he can only learn these lessons on his own and not make the same mistakes again. Here it is, thought Axel as he looked at the office in front of him. Dolores Umbridge. Professor Didier. Knock knock. As he knocked on the door, come in, came a sugary voice. Axel entered cautiously, looking around. Though looking around only caused him to cringe at the sight. The surfaces had all been draped in lacy covers and cloths. There were several vases full of dried flowers, each residing on its own doily, and on one of the walls was a collection of ornamental plates, each decorated with a large technicolored kitten wearing a different bow around its neck. These were so foul that Axel had to make an effort to not look disgusted. And on one end of the room, there were piles of papers stacked up together neatly. Good evening, Mr. Hunt, spoke Umbridge, causing Axel to look back at her. Evening, replied Axel expressionlessly, inwardly thinking if it would be a good idea to ask her to make it quick. Can he just bribe her to let him leave quickly? Umbridge smiled. You know, Mr. Hunt, I've been rather keen to talk to you, she said, making Axel have a bad feeling about this detention. I don't understand why, Professor, said Axel, not giving out anything. Umbridge relaxedly mixed a few spoonfuls of sugar in her tea. You see, Mr. Hunt, you're the only person I don't know the blood status of. So, I've been waiting for you to slip up and give me the chance to give you detention. And now, I want to know whether you are a half-blood or a pure blood, she said, taking a sip of her tea. Axel frowned. Why is that important, Professor? He asked, but he could tell just by how she said the word Muggleborn that he was in trouble. Umbridge tilted her head, still smiling. How is that important? She repeated the question to emphasize her bafflement. It is of paramount importance, Mr. Hunt. I only give harsh detentions to Muggleborns. Though sometimes half-bloods with lowly backgrounds also have the fortune of experiencing it. Pure blood's blood that is much too precious to be spilled for a mere detention. Harsh punishment. Blood. Axel had goosebumps hearing that. He was already beginning to plan what actions he should take if things went south. Well, I'm actually a pure blood, he said simply. My family is quite secretive, so I've kept my background a secret. But they're very powerful, he lied without batting an eye. Anything to get this creepy woman off his back. Umbridge did react for a moment as she put a hand on her chest. Though after that the smile came back on her face with full force, giving off a sinister vibe as she looked at him. You lied. Hee, tut, that can only mean one thing, right dear? She asked, looking as though her favorite moment had come. How did she know? Axel couldn't understand. Professor, what I said was the truth. How can you accuse me of lying? He asked heatedly, still not giving up the act. But Umbridge seemed to just ignore him. Whatever you say, Mr. Hunt. Your punishment is to write lines. Now sit over there and start writing, she said jubilantly as she fished out a few pieces of parchment and a quill from her desk drawer. Professor, I can't really write. My hands don't work very well, he said, showing her his trembling hands. The toad's smile widened. Then that's even better, isn't it? After all, this is supposed to be a punishment, right? She asked with her unusually wide smile. Axel sighed. He was now having difficulty keeping up his polite facade any longer. His hands were very sensitive ever since the torture incident, and doing anything with them hurts like a bitch. Punishment for what? Sleeping in a class where you weren't even teaching anything. I already know everything about first. Your defense against the dark arts, he said, his politeness slipping away. Seriously, what the fuck was wrong with this woman? He was just minding his own business, sleeping peacefully, and she comes and gives him detention. Okay, he didn't mind and even came to the detention on time as any polite person should. But she gives him such a difficult punishment for just sleeping in the class. Tut. That's no way to talk to your teacher, Mr. Hunt. Your detention has been extended by 2 days. Now, do your lines, she said, still maintaining that damned smile. Axel was about to call her exactly what she was being right now. Increasing the duration while he is struggling to even sleep in his busy schedule. A clemency, but, he stopped himself using a clemency as he breathed in deeply. Okay. To force him to use a clemency, this woman had some real skill in getting under people's skin. It's just lines, right? Let's just get this over with, he thought. What am I supposed to write? He asked, picking up the parchment and quill and sitting down. Let's see. How about, I must know my place? She asked pleasantly, it would certainly help you in your future. Grit, a clemency. His acclemency worked overtime as he gritted his teeth. This annoying bitch. How long do I have to write them for? Umbridge looked at him and smiled. As long as take to stick, a clemency. A clemency. He thought as he tried a clemency once again. He was incredibly pissed. And if it had not been for a clemency, he would have given this woman a piece of his mind by now. How can someone be this annoying? In fact, he actually had no problem writing lines as punishment. If it had been McGonagall, Flitwick, or any other professor who had given him this punishment, he wouldn't have minded so much. Because those professors actually teach something in their class and he was wrong to sleep during it. But this bitch, she doesn't teach anything in the class. Just passes time. And he had seen many other students who were purebloods sleeping peacefully in her class on multiple occasions. So why only him? Not to mention she's so infuriating. I must know my place. Seriously. Does he need to remind this bitch of her place? Alright, it was decided. Bitch, you are officially on the shit list now, thought Axel as he picked up the pen with much difficulty. This was so humiliating. Don't forget to write your name on the column first. We don't want to get the papers mixed up, do we? She said, pointing at the long piles of paper at the far end of the room. And Axel realized what those piles of papers actually were. Other students' detentions. Whatever, he thought as he made to write his name. Axel, don't write your name on it. Came the system's prompt in red. Axel frowned. Why? He asked. Every paper is a binding contract that says you won't knowingly or unknowingly reveal any information on what happened in this office along with some other clauses. The fuck? Axel actually knew how to check whether a paper is a contract or not. You just have to cut a corner, and if even a small amount of light is generated, it would be a contract. To his horror, he found out that it was true. Cursing himself for not checking, Axel decided not to write his name completely and only wrote Axe Hut. His handwriting was so messy that no one other than him would be able to tell the difference anyway. After this, he began to write the line he had been given as quickly as possible. But, as soon as he was finished with one line, the quill dropped out of his hand as a huge amount of pain exploded from the back of his hand. As explained, his hands were so sensitive that even doing normal work with them hurt. Whenever he moves them, the damaged nerves still corrupted with dark magic still get stimulated and reproduce the pain from cruciatus based on the amount of movement and strain his hand has been put under. Now imagine it being stabbed into by a sharp but insufficiently sharp object, and then the object is dragged along all those overly damaged nerves filled with the residual dark magic of the cruciatus. What the fuck, he thought as he tried not to yell out, feeling a pain that reminded him of that day. What is this thing? The quill in your hand is called blood quill. It is an object of torture that is a type of quill that does not require ink, as it writes with the blood of the person using it. What the user writes will be carved onto the back of his or her hand, and the blood from the words sliced into the hand will be magically siphoned and be used as ink on the parchment. This bitch. He muttered as he looked at the piles of papers stacked against the wall. He also recalled how that mousy boy had tried to warn him of something while he was rubbing the back of his hand. He then looked at the smiling appearance of the bitch and realized. The bitch has been torturing children for her entertainment. With red-hot rage bubbling inside him, Axel looked down at the words inscribed in the back of his hand, "I must know my place." They were etched into his skin in a very messy, barely recognizable writing. Looking at them increased his anger further as he felt something rising inside him. Killing intent. One similarly powerful compared to the one he felt for the man who had tortured him with cruciatus. This bitch. She is going to die. It has been decided. But ironically, those words were also the ones to bring some rationality to his mind. I must know my place, that's right, he must know his place. He was a student with no background. Everyone knows that he is currently the only other person in her office. Once he kills or even assaults a professor, he was doomed to be expelled from the school. Which would mean he wouldn't be able to steal the stone and heal himself. Slowly, the desire to kill and take revenge was overpowered by the desire to be healed. To not ruin the plans he had already formed. With everything thought through, Axel finally looked at Umbridge. Umbridge flinched as her teacup fell out of her hand, which had suddenly gone weak just by looking into those glowing pair of amber eyes. Axel promised the woman her death with his eyes. Whether it is a year later or 100. If she dies by his hands, he'll make sure it is painful. Then, he left without saying a word, and Umbridge, who had peed herself in fear, couldn't say or do anything to stop him. Though even as he left, he couldn't help but wonder. How the hell did she know I was lying earlier? AN posted this one even before the promised time. Another coming in a few hours since it's double chapters. Its title is The Final Day. Just gimme those POWSTONES. MC would be healed in around 4 chapters. It's a new month. Read ahead and support me on Patreon. Patreon.com/snollygoster. Chapter 45. The Philosopher's Stone. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Mr. Hunt. Just out of curiosity, could you tell me your father's name? He asked, surprising him. But what surprised him more was the legitimacy probe he felt right after. Axel tried not to show how surprised he was. This time, he was really caught off guard since from what he could observe, Gorsky didn't seem to have ill intentions just a moment earlier. Plus, legitimacy is rare. Very rare. But he wasn't really worried. The system will always prevent any sensitive information from leaking. Axel casually broke eye contact, thus breaking the connection, as he answered the question. I never knew my father, Professor. But I believe he was a muggle named Ethan Hunt, replied Axel, making up a random name. It would be an impossible mission for Gorsky to get anything out of this. Oh, is that so? Uttered Gorsky as he looked at Axel pensively. Well, your face looked familiar. And you have the same surname as a man I knew in the past, so I asked. Axel shrugged, not a problem. May I leave now, Professor? Gorsky still seemed to be in deep thought. Yes, of course. Thanks for your help, Mr. Hunt. I hope you enjoy your holidays. Likewise, sir, replied Axel as he started to leave, still on guard. Oh, and Mr. Hunt. Axel paused. Do be careful. Your name and appearance might attract the wrong sort of attention, said Gorsky, sounding ominous for some reason. What the fuck was that about? Exclaimed Axel as soon as he was out. System, what did he want to know? Basically, Jakub Gorsky wanted to know if you are related to Tristan Hunt or not. Your appearance and surname would suggest you are. Axel's brows furrowed. Why would he want to ask that? He asked. Gorsky is a member of a mysterious organization. Your dad stole something very important from them and escaped. Gorsky wanted to know if he passed it on to you. Axel shook his head ruefully. How the fuck would I have anything that valuable? They left with me Nothi. He paused as his hand went to his neck. It can't be, right? He thought as a blurry scene of the cross-shaped pendant being placed around his neck came to surface in his mind. It was the only thing they had left him. Yes, that is precisely the object your dad stole. Axel clenched his fist around the pendant. So, that's why Gorsky told me to be careful, he muttered. They'll come for him as soon as they discover the clues relating him to Tristan. Axel took out the pendant and stored it in his pouch. So, what the fuck is this thing? Why is it so important? He asked finally. Information restricted. The fuck? Why? That object is the key to fighting Voldemort and the key to obtaining powers. It's the most important piece that you can use against Voldemort. That is why direct information is restricted. It would be too big an interference to directly tell you its use. If this level of interference was allowed, then the Akashic records would not have to go through the trouble of slowly helping you become strong on your own. Axel sighed. It is never easy with the system. So what the fuck am I supposed to do? Special quest activated. Go after the members of the mysterious organization and extract the information on using the key. Rewards. He was left with hundreds of thoughts. Another special mission. But damn, it does make sense. If the system can't tell him, then the only other people who can will have to be the ones who had it in the first place. So, those were the people who killed his so-called parents, huh? He is supposed to go after them, if he wants to know the powers of this key. And that even if he doesn't go after them, they are going to come after him anyway as soon as they notice the obvious clues. Whatever the case, there's one thing that's absolutely clear now. He has to get healed as soon as possible. At night, Axel opened his eyes as soon as he felt the disturbance. He was currently on the third-floor corridor, waiting for the right opportunity. He had assessed Dumbledore's skill level and his final decision was, stealing the stone from Dumbledore would be too difficult and tricky with only 1 year of learning magic. That's why he has a different plan. This other person, whoever it is, clearly has much more preparation, experience, and resources than him. So, Axel has decided to hitch a ride, so to speak. And right now, it seems that the person is here. Well, let's go fishing, he thought as got ready. With the SP he had gained from his stealing spree from Slytherin dorms and girls' dorms, he had bought some more important skills aside from the Traceless Thief. True invisibility. Gives the ability to be invisible. You can also make anything with your physical contact invisible. You can also cast it on others with their consent. Soundless. Nullifies sound. You can even chant spells soundlessly. You can also cast it on others with their consent. Erase scent. Once mastered, not even the best of predators can detect your scent. These skills could also be performed using the normal spells given in books, but not to the extent he could do with the system's method. Plus, they weren't that expensive. And they were faster to learn using the system's method. So, Axel would say that it was a good bargain. As waited, the outline of the person became clearer as they became visible to Axel. So, it is you, he muttered, still under, soundless, and other stealth skills, his grip on his wand tightening as he saw who the thief was. It was Umbridge. Axel had high suspicions from the start that it was her. That was one of the reasons why he didn't take revenge on her yet. If he killed her, then who would steal the stone for him? Today, Umbridge was wrapped in a heavy dark cloak and to his surprise, she was actually floating. He watched in surprise as the flying bitch suddenly sped up as she flew right past the notification and alarm wards that Dumbledore had installed. Fuck! Exclaimed Axel in irritation as he realized what she was doing. He had expected her to subtly avoid or disarm the notification ward, but the bitch bulldozed right past it. It would seem that even she didn't have a solution to that ward. She either didn't detect it or just didn't care. Umbridge was going to speed-run the entire thing so that she can escape before Dumbledore arrives. Wait for me, you bitch! Yelled Axel as he followed on his broom, the Valentino knife in one hand while his wand in the other. Umbridge seemed to have gone beast mode tonight as Axel saw her power through the obstacles and traps. The door at the far end was blasted open and a three-headed dog was killed with 3 bursts of green lights as Umbridge yelled out the spell continuously. She then proceeded to roughly navigate through all the obstacles, making things very easy for Axel, who only had to follow. Damn, is it going to be so easy? He muttered as he saw her take down 2 trolls one after another. He had already gotten past a lot of obstacles without having to do anything. Umbridge was doing great but, something didn't add up. These obstacles. He muttered. Why does it feel like they've been designed for kids? They certainly weren't what he was expecting after looking at the level of wards placed at the entrance. Axel felt like he could get past them on his own easily. The next room had a piece of paper and some potions and the room was surrounded by black flames. He thought that Umbridge would check out the paper and potions. But, to his surprise, she didn't even glance at those things as her cloak wrapped around her completely and she plunged directly through the fire. No. Axel didn't have the time to think much. His ride is leaving him stranded here. Arcane eyes, having no choice, he activated his arcane eyes to look around the room. This fire couldn't burn endlessly without any source. And sure enough, he found the fuel buried in the ground. Axel cut off the source and the fire suddenly vanished. It really is child's play, he muttered as he rushed into the next chamber. Thank God she's still here, he thought as he found Umbridge standing in front of a mirror. To his surprise, she wasn't rushing through this one. Is this it? He thought. It would seem that this was the place where the stone was hidden. It's inside, he heard an eerie voice say. And Axel got goosebumps on his arms. He saw a dark silhouette emerging from Umbridge's chest. Umbridge went down to her knees. My lord, what shall I do? Foolish woman. It's your job to figure it out. If I could be corporeal, then the stone would have long been in my possession," said the voice in anger. "Why? Yes, my lord." Umbridge bowed, right after which she began trying out different methods to try and get the stone out of the mirror. A few minutes passed as Umbridge tried out everything. Axel was getting impatient. "Dumbledore. I knew that old man wouldn't make it so easy." Axel heard the silhouette rage as time started to pass. "We're taking the mirror with us," he said, making Axel move. It seems that this was his cue to take action. Axel relaxedly raised his wand to point it right at Umbridge. Though, before he could do anything, he heard rushed footsteps from behind. "Umbridge. Stop." Axel, the silhouette, and Umbridge all turned their heads in unison at the unwelcome intrusion. "Son of a..." Axel cursed out loud when he saw who the new guests were. One of them was Rose Potter. But, there wasn't much of a problem with her presence. He had already warned her earlier. After that, if she still had a death wish, she was free to come. But... "What the fuck are you doing here?" he almost yelled as he looked at Daphne, who was also present beside Rose. It would seem that the others really had taken his advice and given up on the stone except for Rose Potter, who had rushed in anyway. But, what is Daphne doing here despite agreeing to not go? It had to be noted that these two were nothing, in front of Umbridge. They stood no chance, and Umbridge won't show them any mercy. Axel punched the air in frustration. He couldn't understand why she would do this. Daphne is usually a smart and logical girl who would disdain to do these Gryffindor-ish acts. She wouldn't do anything so suicidal. Unless, Axel's eyes widened as he realized. Yes. That's it. How could he have been so blind to not see it? Daphne is usually smart and logical, unless it's about her sister. The Philosopher's Stone. Its elixir can grant the drinker immortality. Astoria is dying and all methods to save her have failed, except this one. And when Daphne heard about this news, she must have thought of getting it for her sister. She usually wouldn't have been so impulsive, but it was probably her only shot. Axel recalled how excited she had been when she first told him about the stone. She seemed much happier that day now that he thought about it. But he had been too busy and self-absorbed to notice that. On the other hand, she was the one worrying about him, and now she was in danger because he hadn't noticed it. Ha 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 ha. A dark chuckle was heard as a face became visible in the dark silhouette. "Rose Potter, daughter of that mudblood, we finally meet, An. It's time, bois. The revelation, Lily Potter POWERSTONES. Please do send. Come read ahead and support me on .com/snollygoster. Chapter 46. The Revaluation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Rose Potter. The daughter of that mudblood. We finally meet, said the voice. Rose and Daphne, who were only expecting Umbridge or Snape, were understandably taken aback upon coming across a ghost-like creepy existence. What the fuck are you? Asked Daphne, and Rose also wanted to know the same. You. Umbridge pointed her wand at Daphne, and Daphne's legs gave away as she fell to her knee. Foolish girl. You don't know who you're talking to. She yelled with a deranged expression. You have to thank Daphne's lucky stars for being a pure blood, or she'd have eaten a Crucio by now. You are in the presence of the most powerful Dark Lord of all time, Lord Voldemort. Show some respect. X3 Axel paused in his actions as he looked back at the snake-faced existence in shock after listening to Umbridge. This is Voldemort. How? Wasn't that guy supposed to be in the Netherworld? System. He is indeed Lord Voldemort. As explained, he has his means of influencing the world. Fuck. Axel cursed. As if this wasn't difficult enough. Rose also shook her head in denial. Voldemort is dead. I vanquished him a decade ago, she declared, examining the ghost-like existence in front of her. How could he be Voldemort? Voldemort cackled, looking amused. Don't be delusional, girl. Lord Voldemort is very much alive. And you had no hand in anything that happened a decade ago, it was all that woman's doing. Oh, how I wish I could torture her, he said, spitting out the last part with venom in his voice. Rose couldn't understand what was happening. What the hell, she began, but Daphne had heard enough. Expelliarmus, she yelled, pointing her wand at Umbridge. She was here for the stone and she was going to get it. Axel, who was tinkering with the mirror, trying to get the stone out, cursed under his breath. Can this girl not court death for a moment and let him steal in peace? The spell did hit Umbridge, but it hit her cloak and fizzled out, having no effect. Following her lead, Rose also tried to fire her spells, but to no avail. Hee, that was cute, dear, said Umbridge, after which, she pointed her wand at the girls. Tenebris ligere. Two dark ropes got conjured as they snaked towards Rose and Daphne. The girls tried to avoid, even tried firing spells at it, but it was all in vain as they soon got tied up. She then proceeded to fire 2 disarming spells at them, making their wands fly out of their reach. That should do for now, she said before turning her attention to the mirror. She came to stand in front of it and tried moving it in order to store it, but it wouldn't budge. Axel didn't do anything since he had already tried storing it to no avail. Of course, it couldn't have been that easy, she murmured. What shall I do, master? Try using the Potter girl, came Voldemort's voice, it will show her something different. Umbridge did as she was told and Rose, who was still bound by the ropes, found herself being hauled to face the mirror when Umbridge pointed her wand at her. Look into the mirror, Umbridge ordered as she all but shoved Rose's face in front of the mirror. Rose looked into the mirror and her eyes widened just a fraction, letting Axel deduce that it actually worked. What do you see? Demanded Umbridge, not quite sure if Rose got anything. But Axel already could tell by noticing Rose's minute reactions that something was up. Arcane eyes, having no choice, he once again used arcane eyes and suffered the headache. But it was worth it. Just as he'd expected, there it was. A glowing mass of energy, bright enough to make him close his due to glare, just lying in the pocket of her robes. But even after getting the stone, Rose feigned ignorance. I see that I'm the Quidditch captain. I have the Philosopher's Stone in my hand, there's a certain annoying boy prostrating in front of me, acknowledging my superiority. Lies. She's lying. Lord Voldemort knows that he always knows. Exclaimed the ghost-like apparition. Axel's eyes widened as he realized how this Umbridge knew he was lying when he told her he was a pureblood. Umbridge waved her wand and Rose's head got banged onto the mirror. Tell me now, or you'll be in for a world of pain, girl, she yelled, pointing her wand at her. Rose shook her head, remaining stubborn through the pain. Tell me now, Rose, and I can consider giving you and your mother an easy death, said Voldemort in a sinister tone. He didn't seem much bothered at Rose's futile resistance. Rose paused in her struggles as she comprehended Voldemort's words. Didn't he already kill her mother? What did you mean by that? She asked. Axel, on the other hand, couldn't care less about these things. His eyes were focused on the pocket of Rose's robes, where the most valuable treasure was hidden. He looked down at his hand, which wasn't stable at all. Nowhere near good enough to be able to take the stone while Rose is still on guard. Voldemort chuckled at Rose's cluelessness. You don't know anything, do you? You're not as bright as your mother, Rose Potter, he said in amusement. While Voldemort was amusing himself, Axel had already made up his decision. Even with these crippled hands, it's not that difficult for him to get the stone. Electrica Impulsa, X5. He charged his electrical zap 5 times in very quick succession, generating a massive amount of charge begging to be unleashed. Right after which, he stuck it into Umbridge, right into the exposed area around her neck. Overwhelmed with agony, Umbridge screams like a dying pig, distracting not only Rose, but everyone else in the room as well. Though she wasn't the only one who screamed. The cloak which was wrapped around her also somehow produced a sound as it left her body and escaped. "This was for the torture, you bitch," muttered Axel, even though no one could hear him through, soundless, as he quickly extracted the stone from Rose's pocket while she was distracted. The stone, after being in physical contact with him, got cloaked in the invisibility magic through true invisibility, and Axel quickly pocketed it, still not quite believing he had actually gotten the stone. Finally, I can be healed, I can be healed. I can be healed, he thought repeatedly in disbelief. What have you done? On the other hand, Voldemort grew enraged at Rose, thinking it was her who did this while playing dumb. Not wasting any more time, he plunged straight into Rose's head, trying to burrow into her mind to find out the location of the stone. "Rose!" screamed Daphne, who was still bound, and Axel also thought that Rose Potter was done for, but, snap, what? Came Voldemort's shocked voice. As soon as Voldemort tried to touch Rose, her eyes went pitch black as a vortex of dark magic began swirling around her. And then, boom, an explosion happened with Rose at the center while Axel got thrown off as he defended the stone with his life. Black lightning crackled as a deep cut appeared in space, which sucked Voldemort straight into it. Umbridge, who had Voldemort's locket around her neck, also started to get dragged into the crack. "No, you don't, bitch!" exclaimed Axel, who made to stop her. One little shock was not nearly enough to satisfy his revenge. Ah! But at this moment, a scream sounded, making him turn immediately before he knew who the screamer was. He saw that the cloak which had been wrapped around Umbridge had now its tentacles out as it captured Daphne. It didn't even take a second for Axel's mind to deduce what was more important. Killing Umbridge, of course. There's no telling whether that bitch would be dead or alive after going through that hole, and there's no telling how many she'll torture if she's alive. While Daphne could be saved even a few seconds later, right? But, even before he had made his decision, his body was already moving towards Daphne. Daphne, who was already bound, was trying to back away, but the creature already had its tentacles wrapped around her. Axel already knew the creature could absorb normal spells, and he didn't trust his aim enough to not accidentally hit Daphne. Thus, he got in close range and began cutting it with the Valentino knife, making blue streaks of light with it as he cut through the tentacles. But, the knife strikes he delivered using the system's magic skill, went right through it, giving no damage at all. Expecto Patronum. A familiar voice came from behind him, and Axel saw a huge owl, swooping down, helping him tear off the cloak-like creature using its talons. Though, unlike Axel's knife, the creature seemed to be affected by the Patronus. That's it. Like magic. He realized. ZNNNN, his knife got ignited with intense golden light, which soon cut through the creature with an audible sizzle. The creature shrieked in terrible pain as it quickly let go of Daphne and tried to run. "Not you too," muttered Axel as he did a series of slashes, all leaving burning golden trails on the dark cloak of the creature. By the time Axel was done with it, the creature had already dissipated. Done with his business, Axel looked around the room, this time with arcane eyes. The crack was gone, and so were Voldemort and Umbridge. But that's not what he was looking for. Other than himself, Rose, and Daphne, there were not one, but two other presences in the chamber. And Axel could tell who exactly they were. Not wasting any time, with the Philosopher's Stone still in his possession, he left the room after making sure Daphne was okay. As soon as he had returned to the safety of his room, the quest window popped up. Special quest completed. Get the Elixir of Life. Elixir of Life, also known as the Elixir of Immortality, is a substance that can extend a person's life indefinitely as long as they keep consuming it regularly. It can only be created through a Philosopher's Stone. You need to get the elixir of life in order to complete the recipe. Rewards, elixir of life, plus 3% approval. Special skill. Light armor. Further information of nether dimension. Axel frowned as new information got installed in his head. He didn't have time for this. Ignoring the critical information, he first took out all the potion tools and ingredients from his pouch with the urgency of a drug addict. After giving it some thought, he had decided to make the potions by himself instead of taking someone's help. The materials were too precious and too much was at stake that he wasn't willing to trust anyone. System, how do I extract the immortal elixir? He demanded. You just have to melt the stone. It would be more than enough for making the potion before it's finished. Axel frowned. Melt it. Finished. I don't understand. Shouldn't I have an unlimited amount? It would have been unlimited if the stone was real. The one in your hand is just a copy made up of the elixir of life. The system unceremoniously dropped a bomb on him. What the fuck? This is not real. Then where the fuck is the real stone? I thought the mission was complete. He fired rapidly. The real stone is hidden under a Fidelius charm somewhere, so its location can't be disclosed. As for the mission, you only needed the elixir of life whose location system was disclosed to you and you have obtained it in sufficient quantity. Hence the mission is completed. Axel sat down in shock as he realized that system was indeed right. He was supposed to get the elixir of life and the system also gave the location of the elixir of life. It was his stupid ass that assumed that he'd only get the elixir of life directly from the philosopher's stone instead of finding the already extracted elixir of life. But, wouldn't that mean the stone was fake all along? No wonder the defenses were so lame. Looking at it from another perspective, it's probably a good thing that it's fake though. After all, who knows what kind of traps that old man would set if he got serious. Axel sighed. So, his plans of being the richest man in the world will have to be postponed. Big deal. But he's still going to be healed. And that's what matters the most. He'll become a rich immortal some other day. It's not like the philosopher's stone is going to be destroyed. Just like how no one was stupid enough to put the Real stone under such low security, no one would be stupid enough to destroy it, right? Not really minding the small setback, Axel focused on the more pressing matter first. Yes, he was going to make the potion on his own, but he's not stupid enough to make it using his clumsy fuck hands. He has other methods to do that. A punio totalis, he murmured just like he had practiced 100 times using fake ingredients. The potion and tools began to move on their own under Axel's practiced control. As he's already claimed, if given enough time, there's nothing he can't do even when crippled. That's why he's going to be healed and he deserves it. After taking Miss Potter and Miss Greengrass to the hospital wing, Albus Dumbledore sat in his office as he pondered on tonight's events. Extraordinary, indeed extraordinary, he murmured in amazement. Lily Potter has truly outdone herself this time. To think she actually succeeded in anchoring the protection magic to the dark realm. But, that means his suspicions had been correct and his fears have come true. Tom was truly sucked into the netherworld, and with Tom's affinity, it can only be called adding oil to the already blazing flames. That would mean that he'll now come after Rose with everything he's got. Because after the loss of keys, Rose will be his only way back into this world. Unlike any other, Dumbledore could understand what happened today quite clearly. Because he knew what had happened a decade ago on that Halloween night. Lily had been researching the Dark Dimension, also called the Nether Dimension at the time. When Voldemort came for Rose as they had expected, Lily was prepared. She made a ritual, granting Rose protection against Voldemort. When Dumbledore had rushed there and did find Lily's body in the wreckage, he had assumed that she sacrificed herself to power the ritual. But no. After further research, he had found that wasn't the case. To power the ritual, she had used the energy from the Nether Dimension. And when Voldemort attacked Rose, he was caught totally off guard as the dark energy lashed back at him, almost destroying him. A rift opened and he got pulled in, transferred to the dark dimension. But he didn't go alone. Lily was somehow dragged in as well, leaving Rose with a scar on her forehead where the killing curse had hit. Genius. Pure genius, praised Dumbledore. Putting the matter aside, Miss Valentino is yet another witch who has managed to surprise his old bones. To save Miss Greengrass by performing a Patronus and then killing a Lethifold, an immortal creature, all at the age of 14. Dumbledore sighed as he popped a lemon drop in his mouth. Yes, new generations indeed surpassed the old. First Lily and now Miss Valentino. He just hoped Lily was doing fine in the dark dimension. And boom. MC is finally going to be healed, though it was not easy. As for other things, Dumbledore couldn't detect Axel, so he thought it was Martina. Poor man thinks he knows everything. As for Lily Potter, well, more info in the. I'll slowly make everything clear. Even repeat some things for the skimming readers. Title: Healed. The chapter with the highest number of likes on Patreon. I'll try posting it in 48 hours. Keep giving POWRSTONES. It will the biggest and best chapter, which will be extremely satisfying. Link of Lethifold. https://harrypotter.fandom.com/wiki/Lethifold immortal means. Can't be killed, but it isn't considered alive in the first place. Patreon. Read ahead and support me. Patreon.com/snollygoster. Chapter 47. Healed. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Yep, it's here. As soon as Martina entered her room, she fell into her bed, her head still playing the series of events that she just witnessed. It's a mess, she concluded with all her genius. Her head was currently a mess with her thoughts going haywire. Too much had happened, all within a few minutes, and even when she thought she was ready, she realized that she was still terribly unprepared. With so many changes, she was a bit hopeful that nothing bad would happen this year. And she had also decided to not get involved. After all, she had already tried playing the hero in her previous life and that had gotten her killed. Thus, she had just spent the year not meddling and minding her own business. But, as it turned out, her inner self just couldn't find peace doing nothing even after knowing that something was going to happen. That's why, she found herself going towards the third-floor corridor anyway. If something was going to happen, it would be tonight. And as she had expected, things did happen. The only thing she didn't expect was, how different things will be. As soon as she opened the door, she found Fluffy's dead body lying on the floor. That was just the beginning though. The rest of the traps were destroyed as well, and instead of Quirrellmort, there was the most hated character in the last chamber, with a Horcrux of Voldemort around her neck and two tied-up girls. She couldn't make sense of what was happening. Especially why there was Voldemort's Horcrux here instead of his wraith. After that, she heard Voldemort say some confusing lines. Why would he say he'd grant Lily Potter an easy death? Is she not already dead? Ignoring all that, she was about to help out Rose, but at that moment, to her surprise, there was a bright flash of electricity and Umbridge fell to the floor. That flash of light gave Martina a strong feeling of déjà vu for some reason. She realized that there might actually be someone else present in the room as well under disillusionment. But, why did that light seem so familiar? In her bedroom, Martina sighed as she sat up on her bed, giving up on trying to sleep. The surprises of the night didn't end there. The biggest and nastiest surprise was when she saw a real Lethifold in person, an XXXXX creature. Up to now, very few people have actually managed to escape alive from a Lethifold, and they're so rare that very few people even know about them, let alone seeing one. Martina shivered recalling the appearance of the creature. Lethifolds are worse than Dementors. They eat their victims and are practically indestructible. And upon actually seeing one, she was extremely horrified even as she cast the Patronus. Because, unlike Dementors, a Patronus can't really do much against a Lethifold. And as she'd expected, the Patronus wasn't enough to deter it from eating its prey. But just as she was about to lose hope, golden lines appeared out of thin air, as if someone was slashing at it, and the Lethifold actually took damage. The Lethifold let go of Daphne, and Martina was already rejoicing. But as if the invisible person had a vendetta against the creature, it wasn't allowed to flee as hundreds of thousands of slashes were piled up on every part of its being. To the point that even Martina felt a bit sorry for the creature. In her bedroom, Martina dug out a book on dark creatures from her bag to research what exactly was that magic. The inner geek inside her was going crazy. After this, she will also have to research what exactly had happened with Rose when Voldemort attacked her. What was that turbulence and the crack in the space? This is going way off canon. Jeez. So much has happened, there's no way anyone would be able to calm down after having so many surprises back to back, right? This was going to be a long night for Martina. Meanwhile, unaffected and unconcerned by the night's events, Axel was currently in his most focused state as he strictly followed the steps of the recipe to make his potion. Everything he'd done after knowing about the recipe was for this moment. And it'll be worth a suicide if he failed now, after he'd overcome so many obstacles. Thus, whatever happened tonight would be the last thing he'd have on his mind right now. He continued making the potion as he guided the tools using his magic, paying attention to every detail. Yeah, if he actually wants to, he can be quite good at potion making. It needed loads of practice and time, but he just couldn't trust anyone but himself to make this recipe. Looking at it from a different perspective, he could have still gotten an outstanding in the practical exam of potions, but he'd have had to reveal his ability of controlling multiple objects at the same time. And, did he care enough to do that just for a better grade? Hell no. It took around 2 days for him to make the potion. During this time, at times when he had nothing to do but wait, he'd also check out the information in his head that he got from the system. The information on the Netherworld. Contrary to his expectations, turns out that the Netherworld isn't just some lawless land filled with savage animals. In fact, it's quite similar to Earth in some ways. Like Earth had humans as its ruling intelligent species, the Netherworld has a race called the Dark Elves who rule the world. Or at least, they used to. After Voldemort appeared, the man somehow found a way to fix himself, and then, his rise to power began. He recruited creatures from all the races, corrupted Dark Elves, and managed to build himself an army that began conquering everything. When it looked like the Dark Elves were going to lose, the Queen of Dark Elves, Issachra G. Dendros, gathered all the remaining Dark Elves who were still loyal to her and went into hiding. That's all he got from the system. But, he can't understand one thing. Why would the system give him all this information? Though he didn't spend too much time thinking about it since he mostly focused on making the potion. So, this is it, huh? Axel murmured as he held a potion vial containing a dense silver liquid. He'd done it. After so much hard work and waiting, it was finally time. And now that he was on the verge of being healed, he was beginning to have some last-minute thoughts that hadn't occurred to him until now. System, if this is a very powerful healing potion, will it heal my scars as well? He asked with uncertainty. His whole body, unsurprisingly, was filled with a number of scars of all kinds that he'd gotten through various injuries throughout the years. No, the area of the scars are considered healed. There's nothing to heal there. If you want to remove the scars, then just cut open those areas. This time they'll heal cleanly. Axel sighed, no thanks, I think I'll just keep the scars. Contrary to what one might expect, he didn't actually want to lose them. They are a necessary reminder of what happens to the weak. They remind him of the times when he got them and what led to him getting them. They remind him of his mistakes. And if possible, he wanted to keep it that way. Do they look bad? Maybe, maybe not. But does he give a fuck? Hell no. Axel clenched and unclenched his fist several times, jumped up and down lightly on his toe, and performed several different light exercises in succession. Yup, I hate this, he muttered as he uncorked the bottle. Now that he had the cure ready in his hand, he could freely admit just how unbearable being this weak and crippled had been to him. And frankly, he wasn't willing to stay like this a moment longer. Before taking the potion, he first took a painkiller potion, then he took out his knife and peeled off the skin of the back of his hand with difficulty, erasing the scar he got from Umbridge. This one, he didn't want to keep. This had better work now, he muttered as he downed the contents of the bottle in one go. Cough. Cough. He started coughing immediately and saw heat coming out of his mouth. The potion was so strong that it left a burning sensation as it went down his throat. Soon after, he fell unconscious. Ding! When he finally did wake up, Axel felt as if he was in a dream. Why does it feel like he's in heaven? How can he feel so relaxed? And the most surprising thing was, there was no pain. And this made him realize that he'd been in pain for a whole year. Pain tolerance. 87%, pain tolerance doesn't lessen his pain. No, not at all. It's only an indicator of how much pain he can tolerate, endure, without letting it affect his mental state or body functioning. And his pain tolerance had gotten so high that he'd gotten used to enduring all that pain without letting it affect his daily life. But now that there was no pain, he felt quite surreal. He felt so light that he could fly. Axel decided to focus on the most important thing now. He slowly, ever so slowly, with all the hope and apprehension, looked down at his hands. They were covered in black ash, but this time, they weren't trembling. They weren't trembling and they didn't hurt. Not at all. He finally clenched and unclenched his fist and his eyes in satisfaction as he realized just how effortless doing that felt, unlike before, when he had to struggle to even make it move. He didn't even dare to pinch himself to confirm if this was a dream. If this was a dream, please let him stay a while longer before letting him wake up to the cruel reality. I'm healed. He murmured, wiping away the moisture from his eyes. I'm actually healed. He exclaimed, jumping up, but he jumped so high he almost reached the ceiling. Arcane acrobatics. Progress. 19%. 45%, the hell. He murmured even as a bunch of new information began to pour into his head. Looks like his body really was messed up badly, huh? He took out a knife and began twirling it in his hand like he used to. Right after which, he casually threw it as it got buried to the hilt in the target dummy's skull. Ding ding ding, knife throwing. Progress, knife wielding. Progress. Special skill unlocked. Magic hands progress. 3%, Axel ignored all the notifications. Right now, he was having just too much fun welcoming a precious part of himself that he thought he'd lost forever. He took out his wand, which greeted him with multicolored sparks in celebration, and it hummed excitedly. Even as he did that, notifications kept coming to him of various skills increasing their proficiency. Okay, let's see, he muttered as he pointed his wand at the dummy placed at the far end of the room. Expulso, he chanted, thinking of starting small, but, bam boom, the spell hit the dummy so hard that it was blasted straight into the wall, causing cracks to appear in the wall. His wand hummed excitedly upon amplifying so much magic at once. Ding ding, more system notifications came. Ha, ha ha ha. Ha 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 ha. Ha 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 ha. And, for the first time in a long while, Axel laughed freely as he felt himself breaking free from the invisible shackles that were holding him back. Just like this, the year at Hogwarts had passed with lots of events happening. Mysteriously enough, a certain Damien Malcolm found out that all of his possession had disappeared without a trace. While he was going mad with rage, the poor boy didn't know that this was just a teaser of what was actually about to come. Also, rumors about how Rose Potter and Daphne Greengrass had had a confrontation with Voldemort and how they had managed to stop his return were spread throughout the school. Rose, who had recovered just after a day, managed to get Gryffindor the Quidditch Cup right after, and thus the House Cup. Meanwhile, Daphne, who was more injured of the two, had to stay a while longer in the hospital wing. But lots of people also visited her as well and gave her gifts and treats, since was also a hero who survived an encounter with Voldemort's Lethifold. But, despite all the attention, Daphne didn't feel happy at all. Because, 1. She'd absolutely failed in getting the stone. 2. The stone was now destroyed, as confirmed by Dumbledore, leaving no hope for Astoria and Axel to be healed. Her sister's lifespan wouldn't be extended, and any chance she thought that it might help Axel with his condition had also got away. 3. Axel, the person she wanted to see the most, hadn't even bothered visiting her during these days. Furthermore, she didn't even see him on the train. But apparently, enough people had seen him to conclude that he wasn't actually missing, just not willing to meet her. Daphne was sad throughout the summer as owls failed to deliver letters to him and his Magi. Mirror was switched off. She'd almost lost hope of their friendship, when mid-summer, out of nowhere, an anonymous package arrived, addressed to her name. It read, "Here are the first clear words I'm writing with my own hands in a long while. Thanks for being my hands until now." Inside was a bottle containing a few drops of silver liquid with the label, "For Astoria." End of Volume 1, Volume 2. The Rise Prologue. A woman with red hair walked through the corridors of a grand castle in a hurry. The woman could be considered quite beautiful, with emerald green eyes and red hair tied up in a bun. She was wearing a cloak that covered her whole body, only leaving her face exposed. As the woman walked by, guards in dark skin and black armor would bow to her with reverence, even though the woman didn't seem to acknowledge them. She took out her wand and opened a heavy pair of doors as she went into the room. "Issachra," she called out as walked in. "Issachra." There was a dimensional disturbance in the north of Elastropha. "We need to check it out." Inside the room, there was a chocolate-skinned woman wielding two swords as she fought against multiple creatures. She wore no armor or protection, as her whole body was covered with a dark energy that she'd channel in her sword. This woman was tall, around 6 feet 2 inches, and with a well-proportioned body that was visible through her small garment that only covered her essentials. She had long pointed ears, and a perfectly symmetrical face with exquisite features, but her eyes were fierce and her disposition was such that it'll make anyone bend their knees in her presence. The woman, Issachra, finished off the creature as she sheathed her sword. "Lily, what exactly is a dimensional? What did you call it? Is it important enough that I have to stop my training over it?" she asked with slight annoyance. Though from her behavior, it could be seen that she treated the other woman as her equal. Lily nodded her head urgently. "Yes, it is. It means that Voldemort might have succeeded in opening a way back to the mid-world. Or maybe someone from the mid-world managed to connect to this world." Issachra tilted her head, "And that is important because..." Lily sighed, "Because, if Voldemort actually succeeds in finding a way back into my world, it'll be destroyed. And I can't let that happen. Now, do you want to help me or not?" Issachra shook her head unwillingly. "I'd rather not, since it would only be beneficial to us if Voldemort focuses on another world." "But," she sighed, "how can I deny you? When you are the only reason why we managed to survive this long," she said as she began putting on her armor. Chapter 48. It's not the end, but a new beginning. You are listening at novelfull.audio. "Look, I'm telling you it's him. I'm sure it's him," said Daphne impatiently. Evelyn sighed in exasperation. "And how you know that, sweetie? It's unsigned, and you haven't even seen his writing. Besides, I've tried examining it and the only conclusion I can reach is that it's too powerful and can be harmful," she said rationally. With Cyrus's death, the number of hungry eyes on their family had increased. So, this wouldn't be the first time anyone tried to pull shady tricks on them. Besides, the potion they'd received was rather unique. Evelyn hadn't ever seen it in her life. They couldn't just blindly let Astoria try it, as it might further aggravate her condition, or worse. While the two of them were arguing, they didn't even see when Astoria had come skipping into the room to ask her sister to play. Astoria rolled her eyes when she saw her mother and sister arguing. There's nothing new in that. She thinks it's their way of showing their love to each other. What is that? Her eyes caught sight of a very small vial of potion containing a shimmering silver liquid sitting at the table in the corner. So pretty. Looking at the potion, she saw her name written on it. So, it's this pretty potion today, she thought. Astoria has forgotten the number of times she's tried new potions and procedures that were arranged to cure her. So, this wasn't anything new to her. Quite habitually, she uncorked the bottle and drank it down with one gulp. Cough, cough. Cough. As soon as she drank the potion, Astoria coughed violently as the vial slipped out of her hands and fell to the floor. While arguing, Daphne and Evelyn were alarmed to see Astoria coughing and the empty potion vial. Astoria. Tori. By the time they reached her, Astoria was already unconscious. Daphne began panicking, no. Tori. Evelyn quickly diagnosed Astoria. Call the healer. Now. Daphne tried not to panic as she quickly fished out her magi.mirror and called the healer. At this moment, they heard a screeching sound from Astoria's chest, alarming both the ladies further. In the next moment, dark fumes began to rise out of Astoria, as if being forcefully expelled. The screeching slowly died down as the effects of the potion subsided, leaving Astoria covered in ashes. Tori. Tori. Called out Daphne as she tried shaking the unconscious Astoria. A few minutes later, Evelyn and Daphne waited anxiously as the healer, Mrs. Cattleberg, diagnosed Astoria. The old witch with thick glasses gasped as soon as she began running her diagnosis. What in the world, she muttered, looking shocked. Her surprise only seemed to intensify as the seconds passed and she ran different tests. How is it? Is she fine? What happened to her? Asked Evelyn anxiously while Daphne sobbed uncontrollably. Mrs. Cattleberg stood up quicker than her old age should allow her. What in the world did you give her, Evelyn? Evelyn shook her head. I have no idea. How is her condition? She asked urgently. But the healer seemed equally anxious. You don't know. She repeated outrageously, this thing managed to cure the incurable blood malediction of the Greengrass family. How can you not know? Daphne's teary eyes widened and Evelyn gasped. Cured. What? Did you say? Both the ladies couldn't believe what they heard. Mrs. Cattleberg realized that her duty ought to come first, no matter how groundbreaking this could be for the medical history. She patted the sleeping Astoria. This little missy here is completely healed. Her blood and organs are as good as new and the curse is nowhere to be found. She revealed. Daphne's brain stopped working for a moment as she tried to make sure she didn't hear it wrong. Her mom was in a similar state. All these years, all those times they'd cried when Astoria would smile through her pain. All that time they'd try to be happy while knowing that she wouldn't live long. All that can actually go away now. Evelyn tightly gripped the hands of the old lady. Is that true? Mrs. Cattleberg, this matter, she began, but her old healer cut her off. Merlin's beard, Evelyn, of course it's true. I know how important this is, so I'm not cruel enough to lie about it. Not only your daughter is cured, but she's bursting with vitality. Whatever you gave her must have cost you every single penny you have, if you paid a fair price, said the old witch reassuringly. But no matter how much they wanted to believe it, the mother and daughter pair were still having a hard time coming to terms with it. Especially since they didn't even know what exactly they gave her. Hmm. Though at this moment, the sleeping Astoria moaned a little as she slowly opened her eyes and looked around. Astoria blinked repeatedly. "Mom. Sister," she said, her cute face scrunching up in confusion. "There is no pain. How? Am I dreaming?" Before she could speak more, Astoria was hugged from both sides by Daphne and Evelyn, whose happiness knew no bounds. "You're healed, Tori. Healed. There'll be no pain anymore." "It's gone," said Daphne softly. "Thanks to him," she added in her mind as the silhouette of a person came to her mind. She couldn't wait to see him. Meanwhile, Mrs. Cattleberg sighed. "This doesn't seem the right time to ask about the potion." A month later. Boom! A loud explosion rang out as a number of men wearing skull masks chased a person in a dark hoodie, jeans, and sneakers. If this person didn't have a mask on his face, one would be able to see that his expression was quite relaxed despite the odds being stacked against him. "Kill him. How did he get here? Don't let him get away." "Looks like it's the wrong address," muttered Axel as he saw multiple spells heading his way. Pause. "It seems like a bit of context is needed here. How did he end up in this situation?" "Good question. The answer will be a bit long." After getting healed, there was no limit to the things Axel could achieve in his life. The only thing that was going to be a problem was Voldemort. And the best way to handle Voldemort is supposed to be with the help of the pendant around his neck. So, this whole summer, he'd been trying to find the mysterious organization that had killed his parents so that he could get the information on this pendant. But much to his disappointment, he couldn't find anything. Nothing. He'd tried everything, every source. He even found out that the ministry had also been trying and failing to locate this organization for years. So, when he saw several sus-looking individuals wearing cloaks and masks entering and exiting this place, he'd gotten a bit hopeful. After being healed, his confidence was on a different level, so he got in gangster style. But, they turned out to be a different secret organization. Which is how he found himself in the current situation where a number of spells were headed his way. Resume. Under the onslaught, Axel remained calm as he smoothly activated his skills. Arcane footwork, arcane eyes, wisps of blue light started to swirl around his legs and his eyes under his mask started to glow. Under his glowing eyes, the spells seemed to slow down as he weaved his body through the volley of curses of all kinds at an incredible speed. What the F, how is he so fast? No way. The men were understandably surprised when the person they all attacked together had miraculously survived the attacks. But they were in for more surprises. "My turn," muttered Axel as he pointed his wand at the ground in front of the men. "Erase trace, Bombarda." Magic shot out of his wand with such a rush that the spell was shot like a bullet. Kaboom! The result was a loud explosion, the shockwaves of which swept him back a few feet. Cold sweat ran down his back as he looked at the damage. "Damn it! I still forget that I'm already healed," he mumbled to himself as he felt the huge drain in his magic. During the time he was crippled, he had to exert an insane amount of effort just to cast weak magic. And during that time, he'd also done other things to increase his output. If an ordinary person has to exert X effort to cast a spell, then he'd have to exert 100x effort to cast the same spell. And reaching that 100x amount would be considered impossible, if the caster wasn't a freak like him. That's why he was told he wouldn't be able to cast magic when he got those injuries. And now that he's healed, it's like the limiters on his magic have been removed. And the result is the destruction spread out in front of him. Looking at the chaos he'd created, Axel shrugged his shoulders. "That's what you get for trying to kill me," he muttered. Snap! Just as he was about to leave the place, a snap sounded as a person appeared at the far end of the room. Axel paused as he looked at the new figure. This person's skull mask was golden, unlike the silver masks of the other members. And he also gave off different vibes than the few men who were chasing him just now. A boss, huh? muttered Axel as he saw the other members relaxing as if their savior had arrived. Just as Axel was wondering if this guy would know anything about the other organization, Axel, run. Out of nowhere, a red alert came from the system. That managed to surprise the hell out of Axel. The last time the system had given him a warning against a potential enemy, it was against Martina. And say what you will about her dorkiness, but she was one hell of a dangerous witch if she could casually blow off a magic-resistant troll's head. Axel hadn't thought that this group would actually turn out to have such a member. The person studied the situation as the coward members all hid behind him while reporting the situation. The man nodded as he fixed his gaze on Axel. You can die now, he declared calmly, his voice coming distorted through the mask as he raised his wand. Fuck. Suddenly, goosebumps rose on Axel's skin and he took the system's warning seriously. Light armor, he activated his newly learned skill just in time to be surrounded by darkness which had emerged from the ground. This cheater, thought Axel in outrage as he saw the layer of flimsy golden light was going to be destroyed. The skill proficiency was too low. Activating all his stealth skills, he disappeared from the area, already appearing several meters away. He looked back, only to see that the area he was standing was covered in darkness. Fuck indeed, he muttered as he fled the hell out of there. It's not worth it to stay. Later that day, Axel sighed as he walked through the streets of London, quite far away from the crazy place he'd been in. Eddie E.T. What the fuck was that place? He asked as he grabbed a newspaper to check the news. That was one of the places where the wizard are being taught the ability to wield and control dark magic. Axel paused. What the hell? Isn't that bad? It is and it is not. But you can't do much about it with your current power, informed the system. Darn, Axel couldn't deny the system's words. That golden mask guy was fucking scary. Looks like I got a bit ahead of myself, he mumbled, flipping through the newspaper in his hands. After getting healed, he'd gotten a bit reckless with the way he handled things. After all, what's the use of being so powerful if he still has to sneak around? But the encounter with the man told him that he still had a long way to go. Anyways, the summer break is almost over and he couldn't find anything about the organization in the end. And now there are only two options left for him. Plan B and C, both of which he'd rather avoid. What a waste, it seems like he has wasted his whole summer on a useless endeavor when he could have spent more time training his magic or legilimency. Well, not a complete waste, at least, he relented, looking at an article in the newspaper he had been flipping through. It featured a case where a wealthy family of 3 was robbed clean of all of its possessions in one night, including everything they had in their bank accounts. Spoiling your son to the point of making an orphan boy homeless just to satisfy your kid's vanity, he muttered, shaking his head. Axel wouldn't argue whether they were morally correct or not. But since the orphan kid they chose to antagonize was him, let's just say this is not the first time they're going to be robbed. He dumped the newspaper after checking the date on it. The holidays were almost over. It's time he returned to Hogwarts. Lily Potter waved her wand around in a particular area while chanting different spells. Lily, I don't see how you can find anything here. Why don't we just leave? Asked Issatra, the chocolate-skinned dark elf queen. Lily didn't reply to her. Instead, she fell to her knees looking to be in shock. Issatra quickly rushed to her side. Hey! What's wrong? Lily slowly shook her head in regret. This is bad, she muttered, her breathing quickening as she lost her calm. What is it? Asked Issatra. It's my daughter. He somehow managed to reach her and that recreated the phenomenon that happened 12 years ago, she explained. Issatra sighed, once again not understanding the situation clearly. Lily, you need to realize that everything may not be as obvious to others as they are to you. Lily looked far into the distance, her grip on her wand tightened. It means that he now knows that he can use my daughter to open the portal to mid-world, she clarified, making up her decision. The situation has gotten more urgent. So, she'll have to take drastic actions. Light and dark. Both types of magics exist on mid-world. If the darkness comes from the netherworld, the light comes from another. Voldemort wants to conquer all the three worlds. So, the other world can't be allowed to stay out of the conflict forever. The other worlds wouldn't come in the pictures until later. The main focus would still be on exploring the wizarding world with snippets of information on the other two worlds. Power Stones. Axel meets Daff. Come read ahead and support me on Patreon. patreon.com/snollygoster, remove space. Chapter 49. He returned everything. You are listening at novelfull.audio. With the start of the next term approaching, Axel had to go to the Diagon Alley to buy some necessities. Last time, after he had left the shopping with Andromeda halfway after meeting Bellatrix, he was just a weak cripple with no support. Thus, he had simply bought lower quality and second-hand stuff, even skipping some things at the time to save as much as possible. That day was definitely his black history. The two sisters were both quite the bitches. Andromeda was trying to use him as a test subject. Axel wasn't particularly angry at her, but he definitely didn't want anything to do with her. As for Bellatrix, that psycho bitch first had fun showing him the brutal reality, and then she also forcefully got the memories out of him. He's going to have that bitch grovel at his feet while begging for forgiveness. That's why, this summer, he had returned all the things he had received from the sisters. Accepting those things would mean he's forgiven them. Since he was already using the space-stud extended purse and the clothes, he had sent the money for it instead. They were fucking expensive, but since Damian Malcolm had been robbed clean at the end of the year, Axel was able to pay for them. Anyways, now that he was loaded, healed, and able to make money through many ways, he was going to get himself some better things. The first thing he did was to go to Gringotts. Axel looked at the white building in front of him. With the development of the Diagon Alley, the goblins had to keep up in order to not be left behind. And, maybe because they had a complex about their heights, but Gringotts was still the tallest building in the Diagon Alley. A set of white stairs led up to a set of burnished bronze doors which were flanked by a goblin in a uniform of scarlet and gold. As he entered, a few words caught his eyes. "Thief, you have been warned, beware of finding more than treasure there." Axel smirked when he read the warning. Is that a challenge? Well, you're on, he thought with a smirk. He had heard a lot about Gringotts' treasures and security which had gotten him quite curious. So, for future reference, he activated his arcane eyes. Damn! He thought, looking at the magic around the place. The goblins sure knew their warding. Anyways, he was just checking so that it might come in handy in the future. Deactivating the skill, he walked up to the teller. Yes? Asked the teller, looking up from his work. I need to do some conversions. Currency conversion can be done there, said the teller, directing him to a different goblin. What kind of conversion do you need? Bronze and silver coins to gold and platinum ones, informed Axel. The goblin grunted, not even looking up from his work. Put the nuts and sickles in here, he said, indicating a trolley. Looking at the trolley, Axel shook his head. I think I'll need more trolleys for that. In the end, the amount of sickles and nuts he'd collected turned out to be quite shocking. That's why he got them converted in the first place. After everything was counted, he found that he had around 6,000 galleon worth of coins, which is quite a lot, but not too much of his ingredients' expenses are taken into account. Still better than being broke, he muttered with a shrug. With his skills, he could have gotten a lot more than that. But he only swiped little to negligent amounts from the students so that they don't even notice that there was a thief. To be honest, money is not really the problem now. The Slytherins were a bunch of fat cows waiting to be butchered. He could butcher them when he really needs money. The problem is not having any legitimate and legal and stable source of income to use as a cover, and it's quite clear to a lot of people that he doesn't have any family. So there's no way to explain how he's getting the money without coming to the conclusion that he's Martinez or some other rich girl's toy boy. But oh well, it was not a big deal. He was sure he'll figure something out. Now that he was properly loaded, Axel went to the same hair salon he'd visited the previous time. After a year, he obviously needed a haircut, especially since he now has much better ways of hiding his face. "Sorry sir, but you need a reservation to enter this place." The hairstylist, Paul was his name, didn't recognize Axel at first. But then his eyes widened as he rubbed his eyes, looking at Axel in disbelief. "Merlin's goatee. Axel. Look at you, young man," he exclaimed. Axel was surprised the guy actually remembered his name. Following his words, Axel looked at himself. Well, all he can say is that he's glad that the clothes he had were self-lengthening. A year ago, he was just a short and skinny kid, who hadn't gotten proper nutrition and body care for years. But due to the diet, exercises, potions, and whatnot, he was now quite tall for a 12-year-old, with lean compact muscles that were hidden behind his baggy outfit. Paul left the client he was attending to his worker as he approached Axel rather aggressively. "Just what did you do?" "Merlin's hair, look at those muscles," he exclaimed, thumping Axel on his shoulders. And then he finally checked Axel's hair. "Wait, what the fuck? How the fuck?" he exclaimed, running his hands through Axel's hair, confusing him. "What's wrong?" asked Axel, furrowing his brows. Paul shook his head, still looking like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. He took Axel to a seat as he began to cut his hair. "Mate, I won't even mention the body. Just tell me, how the hell did you suddenly get such perfect hair? It's like, they've been nourished with the most expensive material and all the damage has been removed," he exclaimed, his eyes not leaving his hair. "Did he change so much?" Axel looked into the mirror as he actually looked at himself objectively. Compared to his previous self from 1 year ago, he did look like a different person. Aside from all those ingredients, exercises, and potions, there could be another reason as well. Axel recalled after taking the healing potion, he had changed further. System. Is there an explanation? Affirmative. Healing is not the only benefit of the potion. Since you took it in a larger quantity than necessary, it also nourished your body and cleansed the impurities. Also, your lifespan has been increased to approximately 400 years. And Astoria got her lost lifespan back with the amount she consumed. That managed to shock him properly. To make sure that he healed properly, Axel had taken a generous amount of it, only saving a little for Astoria. Now Axel was feeling quite perplexed. He'd just gotten a few centuries worth more time in this world. He wasn't quite sure what to feel about that. Currently, he was really loving his life. But he didn't know how he'd feel after that long. "Whatever, I'll figure it out when the time comes," he decided. Currently, his only problem seems to be the fact that his appearance might attract more attention. But that's not a big deal, is it? After the haircut, Axel went on a shopping spree as he quickly bought all the things he needed for the next year along with ordering some new clothes. In the end, the only thing that was left were books. But the fuck is happening here? The bookstore had a freaking huge line in front of it, with hundreds of women jostling around, trying to get in. Apparently, Axel wasn't the only one who found this situation odd since he could hear other people talking about it as well. "Did you hear about the students' exchange program this year?" "Yeah, I wonder what school it'll be. What's all the fuss about in this store? Seriously mate, do you live in a cave?" Gilderoy Lockhart is signing the copies of his new book. Lockhart. That pansy guy who's famous on Magi.hive. Yep, that's him. He's got a crazy huge fan following on Hooter and Magebook, whatever, most of them are witches anyway. That's all Axel could hear before he had moved on due to his serious lack of disinterest. Presence reduction, true invisibility, with his skills activated, he casually cut the line and entered the bookstore. Outside seemed quite peaceful compared to the situation inside though. Witches and photographers were jostling each other to get a better view of Lockhart while two men were fighting on the side as Fred and George Weasley cheered from the side. Yep, a mess. Axel had to shake his head at the situation. It doesn't seem like he can civilly get his books anytime soon. So, he decided to simply steal the books he needed. He was just about to leave when another commotion attracted his attention. "Ladies and gentlemen. May I present you, Rose Potter," said a man with wavy blonde hair who must be Gilderoy Lockhart, forcefully dragging a very annoyed Rose Potter to the front of the cameras. A smirk appeared on Axel's face. Well, this could be interesting. When young Rose here stepped into Flourish and Blots today, she only wanted to buy my autobiography, crack, and just as Axel had expected, in the next moment, a knee was delivered to Lockhart's balls, viciously, making the man collapse to the floor in a moaning heap. Oh! And thus, the place became even more of a mess. Everyone was clicking pictures and recording while the fangirls rushed to help Lockhart. "What a creep," Rose muttered before storming off, making the crowd part way for her. Looking at the scene, Axel nodded to himself. That's Rose all right," he muttered, getting out of the bookstore as he went to finish the rest of his shopping. He could already guess tomorrow's headlines. "The girl who lived breaks Lockhart snitches. Fangirls expressing concern about the functioning of Lockhart's broomstick." Though thinking about it, Rose can't really be faulted for her actions. After all, only a spineless or clueless person would let someone like Lockhart leech on your fame like that. September 1st, 1993. Axel stood alone at the barrier of Platform 9 and it was time for the start of his next year at Hogwarts. And this year is bound to be completely different from his previous one. Last time, he was here as a weak cripple, filled with bitterness. But this time, he's here as a powerful wizard, with enough abilities to handle himself. Just whoever they are, how many they are, they can come at him anytime. But still, let's avoid trouble this year, he decided as he walked through the barrier, entering the platform. Too bad he wasn't aware of the phenomenon called raising a flag. What the? As soon as he had crossed the barrier, he was literally jumped by someone. His body instinctively reacted as he sidestepped and tripped the person. By this time, his brain had long realized who it was, so he caught the person right before she hit the floor. "Daphne, what the hell?" he questioned as he quickly put away the knife which he had almost stabbed her with. He let go of her, letting her fall to the floor. Sitting up, Daphne turned around to look up at him to say something, but her words seemed to have gotten stuck in her throat as she looked at him, her pupils dilating. At this moment, another girl jumped him. Since he already knew who it was, he couldn't trip or dodge and let her fall. Astoria hugged him tightly like a little koala. Thank you, Axel sighed. What a way to begin a year. Bonus scene. Black Sisters. It was a fine Sunday morning and both the sisters were discussing some new program that was being organized this year. "Do you think it'll work? The schools are too different in their culture and magical arts," asked Andromeda. Bellatrix shrugged. "Well, it had better work. The support of hit. Wizards of that country can be of great help." Andromeda looked at her sister for a moment. "But why would we need support? Bella, what are you not telling me?" Bellatrix looked at her sister innocently but didn't say anything. After all, going against Atlantis, the most powerful magical country, isn't a small matter at all. While she was still debating whether to tell her not, an owl post arrived, addressed to the two sisters. Andromeda looked at the package that they'd just received. "It's from Axel." Bellatrix, who was completely disinterested moments ago, was suddenly beside Andromeda, already opening up the package. "What did he send us?" exclaimed Bella, looking quite excited. Andromeda hadn't seen her this happy in a long while. With childlike enthusiasm, Bella opened the box, only to find that the box was a space extension charm and it was filled with all the things they'd ever given to him. The smile immediately vanished from her face as she looked back at Andromeda. He sent everything back. An. Oh well, I forgot that the proper meeting was supposed to be in the. Add Black Sisters to the mix as well. Power Stones. Come read ahead on Patreon. Support me in writing this piece of art. patreon.com/snollygoster, remove space. Chapter 50. Like father, like son. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Not far away from the barrier between the stations, two women stood on platform 9 3/4 under disillusionment, awaiting the arrival of a particular individual. One of them was Bellatrix Black, the Minister of Magic, who currently had a gaunt face as she waited for Axel. Magic power would burst out of her from time to time, almost blowing their cover. After knowing that Axel hadn't used a single one of the precious herbs, potions and medicines she'd sent with meticulous instructions of Andromeda on their use, Bellatrix could no longer stop herself from interfering. Up to now, while they couldn't find a proper cure, she and Andromeda had sent many things that could have at least helped him with his pain and alleviate the trembling enough to a certain extent. So, it could be imagined how devastated she had been to find that he'd been suffering from a horrible amount of pain and difficulties every single day for this whole time just because of his hate for her. That's why, Bellatrix and Andromeda had decided to come here against Axel's strong wishes in an attempt to apologize once again and convince him to accept their help. Who are the greengrasses waiting for? Muttered Andromeda, looking at the three witches who seemed to be waiting in anticipation. Their bright and cheerful moods were a stark contrast compared to the nervous and despondent atmosphere around the sisters. Bellatrix shrugged, couldn't care less, she muttered, her eyes not leaving the barrier. She appreciated her sister's attempt at distracting her from her self-blame and self-loathing, but she'd rather stay like this for now. Andromeda didn't give up. I heard Sissy got a new job. Bellatrix frowned, don't bring up the bitch. Andromeda sighed, seemingly giving up as she turned back to wait for Axel. I'm surprised he managed to achieve so much without using any of the potions and medicines I'd sent him. Did you see his exam reports? Bellatrix knew that this was yet another attempt by Andromeda to distract her, but she still couldn't stop a small proud smile to appear on her face. An outstanding, in everything, even flying and dueling, she muttered, the magic around her calming down a little. Even with such a massive handicap. Except for potions, added Andromeda. Snape needs to be fired, said Bellatrix, her mood souring as she recalled that, acceptable. The man is making Axel do practicals with his crippled hands. It would seem that she'll have to cripple the bat's hands and make him do potions so that he understands his mistake. I don't understand why Dumbledore would even keep the man, Bellatrix was saying, but she paused in her steps as she saw a familiar face appear from the partition. As soon as she saw him, her jaw dropped. Tristan. She murmured, squinting her eyes. For a moment, she almost mistook him for Tristan. But of course, she knew it wasn't him, it was Axel. The more you compare the two, the more different the two faces look. How did he change so much in just a year? She thought. This was her first time seeing him in person after a whole year. And she'd never expected him to have changed this much. Andromeda also had similar thoughts. They had been expecting the same skinny and small boy who would hide his trembling hands in his pockets as he tried not to attract attention. They were expecting a lonely boy who was in need of their help. But imagine their surprise when instead of that boy, they found a handsome and confident young man built like a warrior. In the next moment, they saw the two Greengrass daughters rushing the boy, surprising the two women. Bellatrix frowned as she heard the conversation. Why would they thank him? She murmured, finding this scene much too familiar. Andromeda, however, being a master healer, had different priorities. His hands. Bella, look at his hands. She said in a shaky whisper. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Looking at the girl hanging onto him like a koala, Axel sighed as he gently pulled her off and set her down. It was no big deal, he shrugged, it was just annoying seeing you putting up a facade all the time, he told the little girl honestly. Aside from the gratitude to Daphne and Evelyn, another reason for Axel to help out Astoria was because of this. Due to his experiences, he could easily tell that the girl was not as happy-go-lucky as she pretended to be. Far from it, she was quite mature for her age and arguably the most miserable among the family of three. So, after observing this, it was just a bit hard to let a sick, frail and miserable girl pretend like that while you have the power to help her. Listening to his words, Astoria's eyes widened as she looked up at him with surprise. Evelyn, who was standing behind her, patted her head gently. It broke my heart every day to see her do that. You don't know what you've done, she said, looking at him expressionlessly. It was clear that her clemency was having a hard time reining in her emotions since she was trembling slightly. Axel felt a bit uncomfortable with that gaze. It felt like something was wrong here. Well, as I said, it's not a big deal. I just happened to have it so I shared it, he said dismissively. He was somewhat glad he wasn't alone with her right now. Who knows what kind of stunt she'd pull this time. He looked down to see Daphne still sitting on the ground, looking up at him a-daze. And how long are you planning to sit there? He asked, offering her his hand. Oh, with a jerk, Daphne seemed to realize that she had forgotten to move while staring at Axel. He had definitely changed from the last time she'd seen him. He just looked even more perfect, if that was possible. Another change she noticed instantly was, he looked happier. More relaxed for some reason. The constant frown and annoyed look on his face was gone and his shoulders weren't tense like before, like he was no longer carrying a huge weight. Over the summer, she'd been looking forward to meeting him, thinking about ways to thank him, and things she'd talk to him about, but now that she was finally in front of him, she found herself unable to do anything but keep looking at him. She had this flip-flopping like feeling in her stomach and she was having a hard time forming a coherent thought. Taking his offered hand with slightly flushed cheeks, she got up when she noticed something. Wait, she said, feeling up his hand properly, her nervousness went away as the realization hit her. She observed that the calloused hand in her hands was very stable. That familiar trembling and twitching was gone. Is it true? You're actually fully healed? She asked as she held up his hand. She had, of course, considered this possibility after reading that letter, but she had still found it a bit unreal. Axel smirked, healed. He snapped his fingers as a knife appeared in his hand. With another movement, it spun around both of their hands before he made it disappear. You can say that. Try to keep it a secret though. I'm still having you do my homework if that's okay with you, he said, trying to retract his hand, but in the next moment, Daphne had thrown her arms around him, making him freeze. I'm so happy for you, she said, her voice coming a bit muffled. Even if he didn't show it, she was well aware just how much he hated being in that state. She had seen how he'd tense up every time someone would mention the word cripple. She had also seen how he'd sometimes just stare down at his trembling hands, as if willing them to become stable. She'd seen how hard he'd work, always having bag under his eyes and even working during the classes. So, even though it terrified her that he wouldn't need her now that he was healed, she was indeed very happy for her friend. Axel stood there, frozen like a statue. Just like any other orphan, the concept of being hugged like this was completely foreign for him. And it felt comfortable and uncomfortable at the same time. Homework. Anything. He heard Daphne whisper. I'll do anything for you. The Black sisters, who had been listening in on the whole conversation, were still in a state of shock even as they saw Axel boarding the train. That's Tristan's son all right, said Bellatrix, shaking her head. She currently had her magi mirror out as she snapped Axel's pictures one after another. The father-son duo seemed to have some fate with saving damsels in distress. Only, the son seems to have the potential to surpass the father. First he happens to kill the villainous man of the house and then he goes and heals the dying girl. At this point, he practically owns the house Greengrass. He's managed to heal himself and Astoria. How? Murmured Andromeda, finding herself unable to wrap her head around this. Two medical miracles one after another. Bellatrix nodded, not to mention he's changed so much. I don't care how, but I'm quite excited to see what he'll do now that he's healed, she said, finally feeling quite light after months. She was glad that the boy wasn't as lonely as he used to be and had the support of someone who wouldn't betray him. Looking at Evelyn who was clicking away pictures as Axel and Daphne departed, Bellatrix felt a sense of camaraderie. Yep, no way this woman would betray Axel, she thought, being quite familiar with the look in Evelyn's eyes. That was the look of a woman who had found her liege. Bellatrix grinned. Turns out, they had something in common. It looks like a chat with Regent Greengrass was in order. Who knows, they might actually become friends. With the knowledge that Axel will no longer be suffering, now she can work on her revenge on the organization in peace. It's just there was dull ache in her heart knowing just how much he hates her. Lily Potter stood in front of a giant magic circle, with hundreds if not thousands of runic arrays drawn in its layers. It's not working. It's not working. She exclaimed in frustration. Isitra, who was lying on a comfortable seat on the side, sat up while sighing. Could you at least explain properly what you're trying to do? Even though I'm not as much of a genius, but I still have a century of ruling under my belt, she said as she walked to Lily's side. Lily pressed her lips together into a line. The age difference still somehow manages to baffle her. Especially since this beautiful woman looks even younger than her. All right, let me break it down for you, she said, drawing a circle on the ground. Finally, muttered Isitra with faux enthusiasm. This is mid-world, said Lily, ignoring the taunt, tapping the circle. It's the place I came from and the place my daughter currently is. This world doesn't have a magic of its own. She drew another circle on the side. This is Netherworld. The place we're currently in. This is where the dark magic originates from. After that she drew another circle on the other side of mid-world such that the three worlds were now in a triangular formation. And this is the ether world, the place where the light magic and even the normal magic originates from, she said, tapping the third circle. The mid-world doesn't have magic of its own. But, she drew two lines, connecting the mid-world with both the other worlds. But it has special individuals who can draw magic from either of the worlds. They're called witches and wizards. Isitra nodded, so, you're a witch. Lily nodded, yeah, a very badass one, she said seriously. Voldemort is also a wizard, though he's now far more than that. Anyways, she said, pointing at the three worlds. Usually, it's impossible to travel between these worlds, but as you can see, there are exceptions. The worlds can be connected if you have the right circumstances. Especially the mid-world and netherworld. But the ether world, that place has mostly been sealed off from the other two worlds. Not much about it is known except for the fact that a wizard named Merlin from the mid-world had managed to get there, and when he returned, he was the greatest in the mid-world. Isitra nodded. So, what are you trying to do? Lily nodded. I'm getting there. You see, Voldemort is a conqueror. He won't settle until he has all three worlds under his rule. She pointed at the connecting line between the netherworld and mid-world. He is soon going to be able to succeed in traveling between these two worlds. Once he does that, he will also be able to succeed in traveling from mid-world to ether world since it's not that different. So, Lily slowly connected the two circles which signified the netherworld and ether world. I'm trying to directly connect ether world and netherworld for him, so that he stops paying attention to the mid-world. Then we'll be able to buy us some time in which we can ally ourselves with the ether world and figure out a way to take down Voldemort. Or if we're lucky, the ether world might just crush him for us, she said, and Isitra had a guarded expression as she looked at Lily. How do you know all this? And, are you not able to succeed? She asked. Lily shrugged. My late husband once had a friend. I don't really remember his name. Crystal. Tristan. Whatever. Anyways, he was on the run and he thought he was going to die. So he left a lot of stolen research on this subject with us, so that they don't get it back when he's caught, Lily sighed. That's how I got the information. It was centuries of research all just handed over to me, and I was able to save my daughter. She explained. She was truly grateful to the man. He also had a son of Rose's age whom they were talking about leaving at the Potter cottage since they had the Fidelius. Too bad Voldemort had attacked soon after, killing James and sending Lily here, not leaving the man that option. She still sometimes wonders if the man and his family were still alive. And is there truly no way left for you to succeed? Asked Isitra. Lily shook her head. There actually is. The notes extensively mention the existence of two objects. They're called the keys. If I even had just one of them, I can pretty much do anything, she said with a shrug. Too bad I don't have them. So, I'll have to search for alternatives. Isitra looked at Lily as she finally understood the whole plan. So you'd put an entire world in danger. Just to save your daughter? She asked with interest. The ether world was just becoming a collateral damage in this woman's plans. Lily scoffed, hardly. Netherworld has already been almost conquered. The other races have also surrendered or given up, so he already has the Netherworld. Also, there's no way Mid-World can stop him. So, Ether World will have to fight Voldemort, sooner or later. I'm just hastening the process, she said as she sighed. At least that's how she justified her actions. Maybe it was the dark magic affecting her, or maybe she was always a bit heavy, but she knew that for her daughter, she was willing to do anything. New term, new surprises. This year is going to be full of surprises. I've been planning and plotting, hence the delay. Power Stones. For Chads who want to read ahead and support me. Patreon.com/snollygoster